American comics, starting with Superman. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 226, Mirror Dimension. As news of the Battle of New York flooded the air, Director Fury sat in the conference room, facing video feeds from all the top council members. Director, your emergency response team. I remember it was called the Avengers. Where are they? I haven't tracked their whereabouts yet. I think they were entitled to their leave. Director Fury appeared confident, but inwardly, he was feeling apprehensive. Only Black Widow and Hawkeye had returned. The others, including Captain America, wouldn't listen. Despite his inner unease, Director Fury feigned a confident demeanor. What else could he do? If the American leadership knew these powerful entities were beyond the government's control, what would they do? So, Fury kept reminding himself, I'm not playing the boss, I'm protecting them. The council members, observing Director Fury's confident expression, remained unconvinced. What about the Tesseract? Did you get it back, far away from us? Director Fury said, his expression unchanged. But upon hearing this, the congressman was immediately furious. Director, you have no right to make such a decision. Director Fury's mouth twitched, and he wailed inwardly, nonsense, of course I can't make such a decision. They didn't even ask for my opinion, but he couldn't say that, it was too demeaning and didn't fit Director Fury's character. Senator, Director Fury gave a meaningful smile, this wasn't my decision. It was God who made it. I can only obey. At first, those who didn't know better might think Director Fury was taking the blame for Thor. Director Fury perfectly portrayed the role of a kind, reasonable, and understanding leader. HMPH, I don't think you realize the consequences of your actions. Letting your Avengers return to society like this is dangerous. The congressman's tone was icy. Indeed, but their reputation is not only world-renowned, it's universal. Director Fury felt he couldn't pretend any longer. With a dashing turn, his figure towered, the councilman looking up to him. Leaving the conference room, Director Fury breathed a sigh of relief, leaning weakly against the wall, as if his body had been hollowed out. Director Fury. Hey, Director, you don't look well. Are you feeling unwell? Coulson's appearance nearly startled Director Fury. He immediately straightened his clothes and stood up straight. He looked at Coulson with a gentle gaze. You've arrived just in time, Agent Coulson. I have a difficult assignment for you. You said. Coulson's face darkened instantly. Whenever Director Fury made such an opening statement, he knew something bad was going to happen. The streets of Manhattan, New York City. Under the moonlight, the buildings destroyed by the war looked particularly desolate. Numerous construction teams worked overtime to clean up, primarily the bodies of the Chitauri soldiers and the alien technology. These items held immeasurable significance for Earth's current civilization. At that moment, several dark figures, following the moonlight, gradually fled beyond the cordon. Commander, are we really going to hide in a human city? A soldier questioned as he approached the cordon. The leading Chitauri, clad in golden armor, hid in the shadows and surveyed the surroundings. Of course, I'll find a way to contact that Asgardian. Damn it. We've failed against a lowly planet like Earth. If I do nothing, I can't bear his wrath. None of us can. After the defeat, a small group of officer-level Chitauri used their technology to hide. The battle had inflicted heavy losses on the Chitauri, but the invasion of Earth had failed, and the Chitauri commander didn't believe Thanos would listen to his explanation. By then, wiping out half of the entire race would be a minor issue. He didn't dare to contemplate anything more. Commander, there's a circle behind us. After hearing his subordinate's report, the commander turned and looked. He saw a circle of orange sparks appear on the ground, as if welded out of thin air by a welding machine. What the hell? The Chitauri present were stunned. What kind of technology was this? Why hadn't they been mentioned in the intelligence people appeared? The Chitauri commander knew they couldn't reveal their whereabouts. Kill them. The commander immediately gave the order, and the men behind him immediately drew their weapons and fired at the two who had suddenly appeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Energy bullets flashed. Facing the Chitauri's fire, The bald man in the ancient yellow monk's robe took a calm step forward. With a wave of his hands, a vertical orange line suddenly appeared in front of him, rapidly expanded, forming a square, then a hexagram, with a complex rune of circuitry at its center. Energy bullets struck it, sending sparks flying, and the runes that blocked the energy bullets grew brighter. 3 Chitauri were suppressing the 2 strangers who had suddenly appeared. The remaining Chitauri were fighting and retreating, but as they took a step forward, they found the ground beneath their feet continuously stretching back. No matter how fast they ran, they were essentially standing still. "Welcome to the mirror dimension," the black man with the staff said with a smile. He slammed his short staff into the ground and leaped forward, plunging into the Chitauri crowd. The man in the ancient yellow monk's robe thrust his light shield forward, folding his hands, and 2 balls of energy, like fans, appeared in his hands. "Intruders, this is not your place." With that, the 2 of them quickly dispatched a small group of Chitauri officers, leaving them stumbling. It wasn't that these Chitauri officers weren't very capable. In reality, they were far more formidable than the cannon fodder that had invaded during the day, but against these 2, the Chitauri's ridiculous combat prowess paled in comparison. Unable to escape, and unable to defeat them, the remaining Chitauri were quickly butchered. "You have no idea what trouble you've gotten yourself into. You have no idea the terrifying existence you face. You will be doomed, Chitauri." Before dying, the Chitauri commander clutched his chest round, his eyes filled with grief and anger as he gazed at the 2 men before him. Though speaking an unfamiliar language, the figure in the ancient yellow monk's robe understood. He smiled faintly and said, "Why didn't that terrifying entity you spoke of come in person?" With that, he swung a fan-shaped energy blade, severing the Chitauri commander's head. The Chitauri were completely annihilated. "I still have 1 chapter to finish, but it was too late yesterday. I'll post it after I wash it at noon. I still have 3 chapters to go this afternoon." Chapter 227, Thor's Girlfriend. "Master Ancient One, can you communicate with this monster?" Seeing all the Chitauri dead, the black man sheathed his short staff. The Ancient One waved his hand, and the energy blade in his hand transformed into tiny sparks before vanishing without a trace. "Mordo, I'm using a spiritual level of communication. I remember teaching you that. Haha, I remember now. The spiritual level and the soul level are the same thing." Mordo gave an awkward but polite smile. One rolled his eyes at Mordo, then said calmly, "You should go back first." "What's wrong? Are there still invading monsters left?" "No, I just discovered a very strange person. I can't explain it clearly. I need to observe." Mordo didn't ask any more questions after hearing what the Ancient One said. He took out his hanging ring and began welding a portal in midair. Watching Mordo leave, the Ancient One also vanished, but he never left the mirror dimension. From here, undetectable to the outside world, he could monitor the outside world without revealing his presence. The next day, at Tony's luxurious coastal villa, Thor, the god of thunder, was reluctantly invited to Tony's home to watch over Loki and the Tesseract. As for Captain America, he recently announced his desire to integrate into modern society and had moved out of S.H.I.E.L.D., with Black Widow helping him find a place to live. Dr. Banner and Dr. Eric were also invited, but after being controlled by the Mind Stone and gaining insight, Dr. Eric's state became unstable, fluctuating between madness and sanity. "Sir, we have 2 visitors," Jarvis' voice interrupted Lee's gaze. During the day, Tony's girlfriend, Pepper Potts, served as acting president of Stark Industries, helping him with daily corporate affairs, while he was researching the Tesseract in the mansion's basement laboratory. Jarvis, an artificial intelligence, had no right to make decisions on his own, not even to open a door. With the managers busy, Lee, who had nothing else to do, could only ask, "Jarvis, send the visitors away and say no one's home." Lee toyed with a Mind Stone in her hand. Now that it was in his hands, she couldn't give it to anyone else. The key is that Thor didn't even ask for it. As for S.H.I.E.L.D., he dared to ask for one. Tony's intelligent butler's voice vanished from the living room, seemingly carrying out Lee's orders. A moment later, Jarvis projected a screen in front of Lee. It showed 2 young women outside the door. "Sir, one of the visitors is someone Mr. Thor requested to contact. She wants to see him now." "What?" Lee put away the Mind Stone, sat up from the sofa, and looked at the women on the screen. They looked like the girls that Thor had flirted with back on Earth. "Jarvis, you can go directly to Thor. He's in the 13th gym on the east side." Of course, that place has been converted into Loki's makeshift prison, sir, I know, but Mr. Thor used violent methods to interrogate the prisoners. He smashed all the electronic equipment. Lee nodded in understanding. No wonder Thor and Loki stayed cooped up in their room all day, with the occasional bang-bang sound. Leah, worried about the beauty of the scene inside, didn't use her X-ray vision to see it. Now she knew that Thor, influenced by his own violent upbringing, was attempting to change Loki's mind through his fists. Okay, I'll go get him. Please let the two ladies in. With Leah's approval, Jarvis opened the door to Tony Stark's mansion. Jane. The door's open. I can't believe your boyfriend actually lives in the house of the famous Tony Stark. Accompanying Thor's girlfriend, Jane Foster, was naturally her best friend, Daisy Louise. Jane's pretty face grimaced at Daisy's mention of Thor. She corrected him, "We're here to visit Eric. Thor told me Eric's not doing well, and I'm worried about him." Fine, whatever you say." Daisy, a lollipop in her, walked down the avenue leading to Tony's mansion on the coast. Looking at the surrounding greenery, she couldn't help but get excited. "Do you think I'll meet Tony Stark, the young billionaire who's also the superhero Iron Man?" "Jane, you absolutely must stay for dinner tonight. Maybe I'll get to have dinner with Mr. Tony, then her girlfriend will kill you." Jane Foster rolled her eyes at her infatuated friend. The two had already reached the villa's entrance. Elsewhere, when Leah found Thor, the two brothers were happily chatting. Upon hearing Leah mention his girlfriend, Thor grabbed immediately Loki and rushed out. Loki couldn't keep up with Thor's speed, and Thor dragged him along the ground the entire time. When Jane Foster entered the house, Thor also appeared in the living room. Their eyes met, and around them seemed like decorations. Loki stumbled to his feet, his hands instinctively struggling to free himself from his shackles. His face bruised and blue, he stared at his brother. "Bah! You're favoring me over your brother. Don't forget that I'm your family, you're adopted," Thor retorted, then slowly approached Jane Foster. When Thor was banished to the mortal world by Odin and deprived of his divine powers, he was found by the scientist Jane Foster and lovingly cared for. The two of them fell in love, and Thor even felt that if he could live like this with Jane, even without his divine powers and unable to return to Asgard, he would have no regrets. However, Loki, determined to eliminate his brother, insisted on following him down to Earth to gain experience. As a result, Thor, deprived of his divine powers, matured finally into the hammer god in a moment of crisis, and smashed Loki with a powerful hammer again. "Jane, I'm back." Thor walked up to Jane and opened his arms slightly, as if waiting for her to jump into his arms. But Jane stretched out her hand and slapped Thor hard on the face. Snap. "Sorry, I have to confirm whether you are real," Jane explained with an apologetic expression after slapping Thor. Thor forced a smile to show his understanding. "I am real, Jane." Before he could finish, Jane slapped him again with her backhand. Snap. This slap was so loud that it made the teeth of the people around him ache. Loki was very excited to see that his stupid brother was being eaten alive by a mortal. He finally found his weak spot. "Ho ha ho ha. Where have you been? You asked me to wait for you. I have been waiting for you here. I couldn't help crying. Then I looked for you everywhere. You said you would come back." Chapter 228, Concept of Nano-Battlesuit. Faced with his girlfriend's questioning, Thor quickly explained, "Jane, listen to me. The Rainbow Bridge has been destroyed, and the situation in the Nine Kingdoms is turbulent. I must shoulder my responsibilities." "That's a good reason." Jane seemed to accept Thor's explanation, but then thought, "I saw on TV that you arrived in New York a few days ago and fought aliens." "Yes, I did, but I have to protect Earth and you from the invasion from my world." Thor's words were so heartfelt that Jane slapped him again. Smack. "You came to Earth, and the first thing you did was ant me." That look seemed to accuse all men of being pigs. Leah sighed in regret. Thor and Jane perfectly matched the character of the domineering CEO and the stubborn little girl. Straight-laced Ledatra finally came to his senses. He put his arm around Jane's neck. "I was wrong. I believe it was fate that brought us together. No matter what, you'll always be the most important person to me." Jane Foster, who had just been furious like a lioness, blushed deeply at Thor's sweet words. Their eyes locked, their lips moving closer. Daisy Louise, who had been following Jane around like a shadow, finally couldn't stand the two of them flirting. She jumped out and said, "Well, Jane, are you still going to visit Dr. Eric? If you don't, I'll go by myself." The romantic atmosphere was suddenly broken. Jane blushed shyly, avoiding Thor's fiery gaze. Rest. He's in intensive ward 20 on the 3rd floor. He's with a doctor, and his condition is much more stable now. With that, he was about to take Jane and Daisy upstairs. Loki snorted coldly. That pathetic ant tried to pry into wisdom that didn't belong to him. With his brain, it simply couldn't handle true knowledge. No one would think you were mute if you didn't speak, Thor scolded Loki. Eric was also his friend. They had "Why are you looking at me? If I weren't shackled, do you think I'd be afraid of you?" Loki faced Leah, feeling timid, but he remained stubborn. "Go squat in the corner. I don't have time for you." Leah angrily kicked Loki and pointed at the corner. Having just finished showing off in front of his brother, Loki felt a bit cocky. "Mortal, how dare you humiliate me? You're itching for trouble again, huh?" Leah said nothing and began to roll up his sleeves. Seeing this, Loki couldn't help but recall the time he'd been swung to the ground and hammered. Okay, you wait." With this meaningless harsh remark, Loki scurried to the corner and crouched down with his head in his hands. "That's the way it is, Jarvis. Keep an eye on Loki for me. If he makes a move, notify me and I'll break his legs." "Okay, Mr. Liang, I'll keep monitoring the prisoner's every move," the AI Jarvis replied. Afterward, Leah left the living room and descended the stairs to the basement. Seeing Leah leave, Loki was almost in tears. How could someone bully a god like that? If he couldn't defeat Leah, he would have fought him this morning. Downstairs, Tony was still busy with the various instruments. As for Dr. Banner looked tired, now sprawled on a nearby sofa, sound asleep. "Hey, Tony, how's the research going? You look a little tired." Leah walked over to Tony Stark's side. He noticed that Tony's eyes were bulging, the whites of his eyes bloodshot, as if he hadn't had a good night's sleep in a while. "I'm fine." Tony put down his instruments, sat back in his chair, and rubbed his face with his hands on the table. "There are some key things I still don't understand about the instruments you gave me. As for nanotechnology, I have a preliminary idea. I'd like to apply it to the suit, but, hey, buddy, you don't have to figure everything out overnight." Leah patted Tony's shoulder in a soothing tone. Although he was counting on Tony's help in repairing the space-time signaler, Thor wanted Leah to visit Asgard, an invitation he couldn't refuse. On the one hand, Asgard boasts Odin, the most powerful god in Norse mythology. Earning his friendship would be a significant boost to Lee's power. Though Odin is old, Thor has revealed that his power level is likely at the top of the gold legendary tier, or even orange epic. Lee has yet to see an orange tier character card. On the other hand, Thor still owes him an axe. If he ever gets the chance to visit Asgard, he'll definitely have to find a dwarf 4 or 5 meters tall to forge a divine weapon for him. With the aid of a divine weapon, Lee's combat power would instantly soar to a new level. But Tony disagreed. He shook his head. "This world has become unrecognizable to me. Aliens, gods. I haven't been able to sleep since the Battle of New York. Lee, you're so powerful, so you can't understand my worries. I'm just a mortal hiding inside an Iron Man suit." He felt his suit was too weak, and he desperately wanted to improve his combat power. Indeed, Tony was anxious. First Coulson withdrew, then Tony began to feel anxious and mature. Why not combine nanotechnology with your newly developed automatic tracking technology? Make the Iron Man suit based on 4 or 5 components, and nanoscale the rest. This would not only solve the problem of portability but also provide a foundation for further research into nanosuits. Iron Man suits were never perfected overnight. They were constantly improved, each generation addressing the flaws of the previous ones. Bit by bit, through time and experience, continuous improvement resulted. This was also the reason Tony Stark could stand up to Thanos in his mortal form. Chapter 229, Asgard. What you said seems to make sense. I'm just too anxious. Tony rubbed his brows vigorously, closed his eyes for a moment, and then said, "Hasn't Hammer God left yet? He won't leave until he gets the Tesseract." Leah laughed. "Brother, he can't beat you anyway, so why don't you just steal the cube?" half-heartedly urged Leah to rob a god. Honestly, Leah was quite tempted. "Tony, if you can build a suit 1,000 times more powerful than Asgard's weapon, the Destroyer, I'll do it. Robbing Thor isn't a problem. But the real danger is that if you rob the younger one, the older one will come. If you provoke the god King Odin, he'll descend on Earth on his 8-legged steed, wielding the Lance of Eternity. Then, sorry, I'll definitely be escaping." Lea's current strength was at best purple hero level. Before the Ancient One's death, he wouldn't have dared to claim invincibility. If Odin were to become enemies, a single thrust of his eternal spear at Leo would pierce Lea's proud iron frame, sending chills piercing through his heart. Seeing Leo wasn't joking, Tony's expression grew even more serious. Are you saying that Hammer God's father is powerful? Don't worry. Odin is now the protector of the Nine Kingdoms. 5,000 years ago, when the frost giants invaded Earth, it was Odin who led the Asgardian army to repel them, leaving behind Norse mythology. When Odin conquered the Nine Kingdoms, he was synonymous with destruction and invasion. But now that the Nine Kingdoms are unified, Odin has begun to transform, from a warlord to a king who protects his territory. Well, that makes me even more irritated, Tony said jokingly. With his personality, he would never sit back and wait for protection. Tony Stark was never one to passively wait. You need to get some sleep. If you don't, you'll die. Leah stood up and left, walking over to the soundly sleeping Dr. Banner, sighing. One of them couldn't fall asleep no matter what, and the other could snore even when sitting. Facts have proved that anxiety is useless. Eat when you should eat, sleep when you should sleep, get stronger when you should get stronger, and when the crisis comes, fight if you can, run if you can't. It's not a big deal. On the third floor, Dr. Eric saw Jane, Daisy and Thor, and he was much more energetic. I'm fine now, Thor, please let me go back, I still have a lot of research to complete. Dr. Eric looked haggard, and Jane couldn't bear to see him. What you have to do now is to have a good rest. Leave the research to Daisy and me. I heard that you have a new discovery. Jane patted Dr. Eric on the shoulder and comforted him. That's right, remember the theory of celestial conjunction? I used to think that the angle formed by the line connecting the Earth and other planets and the line connecting the Sun and the Earth could be used as a quantitative indicator of celestial conjunction. But I finally found out that I was wrong, because celestial conjunction does not refer to the planets in the solar system at all, but the Nine Kingdoms. Eric pointed at Thor and said excitedly, the Nine Kingdoms are about to be aligned. I detected this through phase deviation. Although I don't know what will happen when the Nine Kingdoms are aligned, I don't think it's a good thing. Wait, the Nine Kingdoms overlap. I remember Father mentioned it to me. This happened thousands of years ago. I can't remember the details. Maybe I can go back to Asgard and ask my father. Again, I'm really just leaving for a while. I'll escort the Tesseract and Loki back to Asgard, and then I'll be back. I'll definitely come back. Thor hugged Jane, his eyes unspeakably gentle. Feeling Thor's fiery gaze, Jane doubtfully. You said you wouldn't forgive me if you didn't come back. The two exchanged glances again, and the others in the room became mere decorations. Come on, there are so many empty rooms here, there's no need for you to show off. Daisy was also despairing. She had been in Tony Stark's mansion for so long, and she hadn't even seen the billionaire. Instead, she had to watch these two people flirting with each other. Are they going to let us live a peaceful life? The next day, the 3-day deadline had expired, and Tony handed the Tesseract to Thor. The group arrived on the expansive lawn of the luxurious coastal villa. Thor held Mjolnir in one hand and a Rubik's Cube container in the other. The container had 2 handles, which could unleash the Tesseract's energy and teleport Thor and Loki back to Asgard. Because the container only had 2 handles, Leah couldn't visit Thor this time. The others showed little sadness at Thor's departure. Jane Foster, who had spent the previous night in a loving embrace with Thor, looked at him with a look of defiance, as if he were a heartless man. Don't make me wait too long this time, okay? Jane whispered, her gaze fixed on Thor. Thor nodded. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Thor glanced around at the others, nodded, and turned the handle of the cube's container. A ball of dark blue energy emanated, enveloping Thor and Loki. Loki, your sins will be punished. Thor put away the cube container, placed one hand on Loki's shoulder, and with the other, twirled Mjolnir. Then, with a powerful swing, he and Loki flew towards the Asgardian palace. Entering the central area, Thor landed on the ground. A pair of guards rushed over, each bowing. Your Highness, Thor pushed Loki forward. I've brought you back. Where is Father? His Majesty is in the main hall. Come on, hold Loki and follow me to see Father. Thor handed Loki to the guards and strode towards the palace's main hall. Frigga, the goddess queen, also received the news and rushed to the palace's main hall to visit her adopted son, Loki. Loki, before Odin could even begin to speak from his throne in the main hall, Queen Frigga couldn't help but warn her beloved adopted son, Loki, stop being so willful. Before things get any worse, Mother, what's worse? Shouldn't you be proud of me? Loki's impassive expression infuriated the elder on the throne. Enough. Those who are not involved, please step aside, Odin's commanding voice echoed through the main hall. Queen Frigga bowed slightly before Odin and withdrew. 5 freshly updated chapters. Please subscribe. Please vote for the monthly post. Please recommend. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230, a multi-billion-dollar project. Facing Odin's majesty, Loki remained unfazed. With a playful grin on his face, he took a few steps toward the throne and looked up at his adoptive father. Father, is there any need to make such a fuss? Midgard is just a mortal realm. Hearing this, Thor couldn't help but scold him. Loki, how dare you speak like that in front of me, father? Don't you realize the gravity of your sin? What a joke. As a benevolent god, am I wrong to go to Midgard and rule over its people? Loki looked at Odin on the throne, his eyes filled with mockery. Odin shook his head in disappointment and said in a deep voice, You are wrong, Loki, we are not gods. We are just like mortals. We are born, grow old, and then die, but we can live for at least 5,000 years. Everything I do is to become king. This is my power, your power is to die at birth. You are abandoned on the cold rock. If I hadn't taken you in, could you still be standing here alive now, Loki? Odin's face flushed with anger, and his gray beard kept shaking. Loki sneered below, unfazed by Odin's wrath. If I was born to die, then order my execution immediately. Loki, stop talking. Thor reached out to block the agitated Loki, fearing his brother would anger their father and be put to death. Father, Loki knows he's wrong, but he's just being stubborn. HMPH. Loki, for the sake of your brother and mother, I won't kill you, but you will spend the rest of your life in a dungeon. Odin leaned back on the throne and, with a wave of his hand, pronounced Loki's sentence. Upon hearing the God King's verdict, the guards immediately grabbed Loki and dragged him away, but Loki struggled desperately. His gaze fixed on the old man on the throne, a cloud of confusion in his eyes. I'm imprisoned until I die, and you want to make this fool king? The fool he was referring to was, of course, his brother Thor. From the beginning, Loki had always adhered to the principle that you, the elder brother, get into trouble, and I, the younger brother, will be king. Yet, every time Thor got into trouble, he was forgiven by Odin, which justified Loki's impunity. Today, Odin sentenced him to life imprisonment, leaving Loki utterly despairing. Thor will do his utmost to repair the damage you've done. When he restores order to the 9 kingdoms, yes, he will become the new king. As Odin finished speaking, Loki let out a maniacal laugh. Ho ha ho ha. Odin, you old fool. You'd rather have a fool like Thor as king than a wise and kind me. Asgard will sooner or later be destroyed by you. Ho ha ho ha. Loki was dragged away by several guards, and his frantic voice could suddenly be heard faintly from the hall. Father, don't worry about Loki. He suffered a brain injury in Midgard. Thor tried to Loki, but Odin waved his hand, signaling that he didn't care. His gaze fell on Thor's hammer, and he frowned. Thor, your hammer, has anyone ever lifted your hammer? When Odin had banished Thor to the mortal realm, he had defended a divine upon Mjolnir. Only when Thor recognized his arrogance and began to truly consider others, willing to sacrifice himself for theirs, would Mjolnir grant him divine power once again. This barrier was a casual one, but it wasn't something that could be easily broken. Now, looking at Thor's hammer, Odin realized it had been broken. Midgardian who even you couldn't defeat, Odin muttered softly. His first thought was some powerful bald man. But that person wouldn't be so bored as to lift Thor's hammer. Thor ignored his father's thoughts and continued, that man also wields thunder, far more powerful than I am. I felt powerless against him. By the way, he said he was from another universe. Father, do you know who he is? He wields thunder, very powerful. Odin began to think of the Eternals. If they were the Eternals, defeating the still young Thor shouldn't be a problem. Despite Thor's thousands of years, Odin saw him as a child, barely learning to wield his divine powers, far from becoming the mighty thunder god. After a moment's thought, Odin shook his head and said, I'm not sure who he is. Bring him to me when you have time. Thor, there's been another war in Vanaheim. You go and restore order there, father. I'll be leaving immediately. Can the Rainbow Bridge be repaired? Thor's thoughts were naturally on his beloved back on Earth. You've brought back the Tesseract. With its power, we'll be able to rebuild the Rainbow Bridge in no time. Odin, a father who knows his son best, knew exactly what was going on. He knew his son had a girlfriend back on Earth. After thousands of years of raising pigs, they were finally getting something to eat. Odin was originally delighted. But human life was too short for them. Compared to Jane Foster, Odin preferred the brave and skilled female soldier Sif. Stark Industries. Since the destruction of Stark Tower in Manhattan, New York, Pepper Potts has been busy sorting out unfinished business there. She was chatting with Happy, the new security team leader, when the secretary approached and said, "Ms. Potts, your guest is waiting in your office." "This guest? He's not dangerous, is he?" "Happy. You're worrying too much. I've worked with him before, he'll be fine." Without further explanation to the 300-pound Happy, Pepper Potts entered the office. However, the man in her eyes wasn't the hunched, down-and-out old man from 13 years ago. Instead, he was dressed in a sharp suit, looking like a successful man. "Hey, you're Killian. Oh my god, I almost didn't recognize you." Pepper was a little surprised. She smiled friendly. "It's been years. What have you been doing all this time?" Killian smiled, shook Pepper's hand, and politely invited her to sit down. "Ms. Potts, you're still so beautiful. This time, I have a project worth hundreds of millions that I'd like to collaborate with you on. I wonder if you're interested." Chapter 231, Read Less Comics. A project worth hundreds of millions, that's a big one, exactly? I wonder what it's about, Pepper asked seriously, not noticing the change in the other's smile. Killian smiled. "You know, the president has always banned unethical biological research. My think tank has finally made a breakthrough and proposed a concept called the extremis virus." Next, Killian demonstrated to Pepper the potential of the extremis virus for biological development. Because they were too close, the security captain outside, Happy, began to report to Tony. When the name Aldrich Killian was mentioned, Tony had no recollection of it, but Happy mentioned an incident at a scientific conference in Switzerland in 1999. Tony's only memory of that conference was that he had taken a fancy to a blonde botanist. To lure her into bed, Tony even helped her complete a research project, something about viruses. "Sir, James Rhodey is here for a visit," Jarvis' voice said, giving Tony an excuse to hang up. In truth, he didn't want to get involved in the company's affairs. With Pepper Potts around, he could leave everything to her, and he could just keep researching the armor. "Happy, I have something important to do right now. I have to hang up on you." Tony hung up on Happy, leaving him feeling as sad as a 300-pound child. He had been Tony's bodyguard for nearly 20 years, and they had once been close friends. But now, with the arrival of the aliens in New York, the whole world had changed. Not only did Tony no longer need a personal bodyguard, but he also spent all day hanging out with friends who also possessed superpowers, making it difficult to even see him. "Since you're not paying attention, I'll definitely investigate." Security Captain Happy's gaze fell on a man traveling with Aldrich Killian. For some reason, Happy had a feeling something was off about him. War Machine James Rhodey, or should we call him Iron Patriot now? He landed on the balcony of Tony's villa in his Iron Man suit. The suit then parted, and Rhodey emerged, heading towards the laboratory on the basement level. "Tony, I need to ask you something." "Hey, is this your new suit?" Rhodey arrived in the basement and saw a man wearing a brand new Iron Man suit, but there was a problem with the connection between the arm and the chest armor. Dr. Banner was also helping to adjust the new suit. Dr. Banner recognized James Rhodey. The U.S. government had been promoting the Iron Patriot quite a bit in recent days. "Hello, I'm Bruce Banner. Nice to meet you, Iron Patriot." "Wow, Dr. Banner, I've heard of you." Rhodey, a military man, naturally knew that Banner was the Hulk. As he shook Banner's hand, Rhodey seemed a little nervous, as if he feared the Hulk would smack him to death. "Dr. Banner, why are you here?" A voice came from the stairs, answering Bruce Banner's question. "I invited Dr. Banner here to assist me with some research." The person coming down the stairs was indeed Tony Stark. Seeing Tony appear at the stairs, Rhodey looked at the man in the Iron Man suit with a confused look on his face. "Tony, who's this guy in the Iron Man suit?" With a swish, the suit's mask vanished, revealing the figure within. "Oh my god, you're the man in black from the Battle of New York. Please call me Leah." Yes, Mr. Leah, I didn't expect it to be you. Rhodey grew even more nervous. Facing Bruce Banner, who hadn't yet transformed into the Hulk, Rhodey could have been fine as long as he didn't provoke him. However, facing Leah, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military had shared information about Leah. Thor and the Hulk had once been tied for first place on a list of the greatest threats. Leah's appearance instantly pushed them both down. After the Battle of New York, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence department and the military's research department conducted a comprehensive analysis of Leah's data. The conclusion was that the government could not eliminate him. Even with a massive military deployment, Leah could not be contained. Unless nuclear weapons were used. As for whether nuclear weapons could eliminate Leah, the military was unsure. Lee, every hero has a nickname. What's yours? The God of Punishment. Tony didn't inquire about the Iron Man suit, knowing progress wouldn't be significant in the short term. Nanoscaling the energy system was a significant challenge, and Lee's suit didn't include one, so it was relatively simple. I've already said, my nickname is Avenger. You can't just borrow my comics and read them and then give yourself a name from a DC Universe hero. I admit you resemble them, but that's just a comic. Lee actually wanted to say, once upon a time, you were just a comic character to me, so you're locating a universe where Superman exists because that's your homeworld. Tony followed Lee's line of thought and began to imagine. He had already helped Lee repair the space-time signal generator, but the original space-time ripple signal was unrecognizable. There were two explanations for this. One was that space-time no longer existed. Even if the space-time ripples there were recorded, it couldn't be reached. Forcing a trip there would only lead to nothingness. The second possibility is that the timeline of that particular universe has shifted, causing changes in the original space-time ripples. Simply put, if Lee wants to return, he'll need to use phase deviations to compare at least 2,000 parallel universes to even find his way home. Tony estimates this calculation process will take at least a year and a half, and at most, forever. Superman is my brother, actually. I was knocked out of the space-time tunnel by that unreliable bastard, the Flash, Lee said with frustration at the mention of his original universe. Rhodey was bewildered by Lee's lament. Banner took it for granted, but Tony patted Lee on the shoulder. Dude, stop reading comics. It seems I'm not the only one anxious lately. You've also developed paranoia, thinking you're a comic book character. Sigh. Amid Tony's regretful sigh, Rhodey coughed and interrupted. Excuse me, Tony, I want to ask you a question. Is there a kind of bomb that doesn't need a detonator, or in other words, the detonator disappears after the explosion, no detonator required? Tony was attracted by Roddy's question. He thought for a moment, unless it is an unstable bomb, it still needs a detonator. But I don't understand why the detonator should be eliminated after the explosion. It won't increase the power of the explosion, but will weaken it. Chapter 232, Terrorist Attack. Why are you asking about detonators? Do they have any special purpose? Or am I misunderstanding something? Tony pondered for a moment, drawing no useful conclusion, so he asked back. Rhodey shrugged, a look that said, are you kidding me? Please, don't tell me you haven't been watching the news lately. News? What news? Tony had no idea what Rhodey was talking about. He'd been busy either studying the Tesseract and space data or developing the next generation of Iron Man. He hadn't even left the house since the Battle of New York. Dr. Banner seemed to know what Rhodey was referring to. I think he's talking about the 3 recent terrorist bombings, 9, to be exact. The public only knows about 3, but there were actually 9, Rhodey corrected Dr. Banner, explaining, this is supposed to be classified, but, in all 9 bombings, no one has ever found the detonator. There's no trace of any bomb at the scene. The police have no clue. Maybe it wasn't a bomb, Lee suddenly asked. If not a bomb, what else could it be? The 3 people present couldn't figure it out either. Did Dr. Banner mention the Mandarin just now? Lee Jackson confirmed this question because he was just recalling the plot of his previous life. The 3 shook their heads. No, but it was indeed done by the Mandarin of the 10 Rings. After every explosion confused, he would broadcast it live on TV to intimidate civilians. Tony was completely, what are you talking about? Who is the Mandarin? Rhodey waved his hand, motioning Tony to calm down. Let me explain. The 9 recent terrorist attacks were all done by the Mandarin. On the 3rd day after the Battle of New York, this guy suddenly appeared and planned the first bombing. The locations of those bombings were not on the United States, So at the beginning, it did not attract much attention, but recently, he began to commit crimes on American soil. He declared that the current world is wrong and threatened to subvert the existing order. Tony felt very strange. Dare to release a video threat. Can't you trace the other party's IP address? I wish it were that simple. The other party has very powerful hackers. Of course, we even suspect that there is an insider helping them hide, otherwise it would be impossible that they haven't caught anyone until now. While Rode was speaking, he shared some clues with Jarvis. Jarvis used a holographic projection to create a screen of light before everyone, revealing the current status of the investigation into the bombing. Tony reviewed all the available information and found no clues. Without any trace of a bomb at the scene, there was no way to investigate. Leah, do you have any ideas? Didn't you just say it wasn't a bomb that exploded? Dr. Banner asked, remembering what Leah had mentioned. That's right. If we can't find the detonator, then there might not be one at all. Perhaps it wasn't a thing that exploded, but why would a person explode? If a bomb was implanted in a person, even if it exploded, there would be residual material. Before they could continue their analysis, Leah raised his hand and gathered a bolt of lightning. I can infuse this lightning into your bodies. With your mortal physique, you simply can't withstand the impact of the lightning. You'll explode as soon as you reach the door, shattering everything to pieces. Before Lee could finish her words, Tony and Rode quickly stepped back in fear. Dr. Banner stared at the lightning in Lee's hand with interest. Noticing the two people beside him had stepped back, he asked in a naive manner, are you looking for a demonstration? Of course not. What are you thinking? I'm just giving you an example to give you an idea, that's all. Lee shrugged and explained. The atmosphere was awkward for a few seconds, and Rode wiped the sweat from his forehead. Mr. Lee, thank you for the idea. I have to hurry back to the military headquarters now. Goodbye. This person was a special person that the military had specifically instructed not to offend, so Rode had to be cautious in his attitude towards Lee. After Rode left, Tony continued to adjust his new Iron Man suit, while Lee and Dr. Banner calculated the evolution of the ripples in space-time. Where is the way home? That evening, Pepper didn't return. The three men in the villa stared at each other, waiting for the food to start. How about having Jarvis cook you a meal? Tony said. His smart butler was omnipotent. Or I could fry you a steak. Is there any in the fridge? Leah used to be a talented cook, but after Diana came to the house, he no longer had to worry about these things. Used to being waited on, he didn't want to do anything himself. Tony shook his head. How about I call Pepper to rush her, or just fly out to buy some? He was halfway through when Pepper's phone rang. Tony, Happy was affected by the terrorist attack. He's in the hospital now. Come quickly. As the call was connected, Pepper's sobbing voice came over. Tony was stunned for a moment, then a few seconds later, his expression darkened. Where are you? I'll be there right away. New York Central Hospital. After hanging up the phone, Tony waved toward the basement, and 5 steel components instantly flew out, first attaching themselves to his limbs and chest. Then, they expanded, connecting to form a complete Iron Man suit. This was Tony's prototype, combining an automated navigation system with nanotechnology, the Mark 42X. Swish. Donning the Iron Man suit, Tony flew out without a word, speeding towards New York Central Hospital. Leah and Banner exchanged a glance, as if asking each other again. What about dinner return? Would he refuse? Banner asked weakly. It wasn't that he was heartless. On the one hand, he didn't know Happy Kingpy and had no idea what was going on. On the other hand, he was truly hungry. Leah sighed. I won't refuse, but I'm afraid you'll starve the Hulk out. Well, let's go take a look and have dinner. With that, Leah placed a hand on Dr. Banner's shoulder and flew out. About 10 minutes later, at New York Central Hospital, Tony felt a pang of pain as he watched a 300-pound man lying unconscious on the bed, bandaged and with an oxygen tube inserted into his mouth. Pepper, what happened? How did Happy get caught in a terrorist attack? Are you okay? Tony asked, holding Pepper in his arms. Chapter 233, Hiding in Leah's Arms. Happy is now Pepper's bodyguard. If anything happens to him, Tony will naturally worry about his girlfriend's safety. But Pepper shook her head. I'm fine. Happy said he saw a suspicious person at a company and said he went to find out more about the situation, and then, holding his girlfriend crying, Tony's eyes fell on the hospital bed. The attending doctor came in, checked Happy's condition, and then said to Tony and Pepper, "Sir, Mom, the patient needs to rest. Please leave. Also, pay the hospital bill." After dealing with Happy's affairs, Tony and Pepper walked out of the hospital side by side. At this time, a large group of reporters with cameras and long guns surrounded the hospital and bombarded them with a series of questions. Mr. Stark, sources say this is another attack by the Mandarin. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Stark? Are the injured your employees? Has Stark Enterprises become the Mandarin's next target? Could you tell me how you're feeling right now, Mr. Stark? Faced with a swarm of reporters, Tony Stark paused. His sunglasses obscured his fury. He glanced around and said calmly, "I have a little holiday greeting for the Mandarin. I just figured out the words. My name is Tony Stark, and I'm not afraid of you. I know you're a coward, so I've decided to eliminate you. I'll collect your body." Pepper Potts tugged at Tony's arm, calming him down. But this time, the injured person was Tony's friend, his personal bodyguard of nearly 20 years. Happy was one of Tony's few remaining friends. Tony was now completely consumed by rage. 90,265. With that, Tony dove into his Lamborghini. Leah was driving, Banner was in the passenger seat, and Pepper Potts and Tony sat in the back seat, one on each side. He stepped on the accelerator, and the surrounding reporters made way. "They'll give you trouble," Tony shrugged nonchalantly. "With you and the Hulk here, I'm not going to panic." Has Steve found a house yet? If not, let him stay at my place for a few days. And there's Black Widow and Hawkeye. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not scared of the Mandarin. I just want to hang out with my friends. Tony, please stop grabbing my hand. It hurts. Pepper slapped Tony's hand away, causing him to frown sheepishly. "Please, I just threatened a terrorist. How about having Pepper live outside? At least if the terrorists really want to attack Tony, we'll be safe," Leah suggested. Even without considering the plot of his previous life, Tony had gone to such lengths that it was obvious he would be beaten by the terrorists. Pepper was worried about Tony and refused to live outside, but Tony thought it over. Facing terrorists, he had his Iron Man suit, and with Leah and Dr. Banner by his side, he had nothing to worry about. Pepper would undoubtedly distract Tony from his protection. "Leah's right, Pepper. You can live at the office for now. I'll assign more security to guard the place." Tony shook Pepper's hand, his eyes unwavering. After a long pause, Pepper agreed some arrangements. Once everything was ready, he returned to his villa. In the lab, Tony removed the steel components on his hands, feet, and chest. Before activating the suit, his suit existed as 5 steel components. Once activated, the remaining components would be nanoscaled to cover the entire body. The biggest problem with full-body nanoscale production is the nanoscale energy source nanosuit Tony wears in Avengers 3. That suit forgoes conventional weaponry, instead harnessing the endless energy of nano-energy, using energy as its weaponry. Unable to address these issues, Tony worked overnight to outfit his Mark 42X with conventional weaponry. The next day, thanks to Tony Stark's sharing of his home address with reporters worldwide, countless journalists gathered on the Malibu coast. "Jarvis, help me get rid of those annoying reporters outside." Tony took advantage of the rising sun to catch up on some sleep, but the noise of the news media helicopters outside kept him awake. Jarvis doesn't have the function to shoo away helicopters. Banner had bought a lot of fresh food yesterday and was bringing out a delicious dish from the kitchen. "Hey, Tony, I thought you'd sleep until noon. Are these macaroni and fried eggs enough? How about I fry a steak, Dr. Banner? I haven't brushed my teeth yet." "Put them on the table first." Tony, before he could even change into his pajamas, slumped down on the sofa. Leah touched Tony's arm and pointed at the TV. "Dude, your house is being live streamed, and there's a missile coming." "Missile?" Tony's sleepy eyes fluttered open at the thought. The TV was broadcasting a live broadcast of his villa, with 3 helicopters firing several Tomahawk missiles at him. What the hell? Tony's first reaction was to crawl into Leah's arms. After all, his brother was made of steel, even stronger than his own Iron Man suit. Hiding in his arms was the perfect place to go. Tony's bear hug caught Leah off guard. The next second, a missile exploded through Tony's living room. Boom. Gravel and glass flew everywhere. Tony, tucked away in Leah's arms, was unaffected. Only Dr. Banner, standing in the living room with his brunch, was struck by the missile. Furious roar, as the second missile whistled, a massive hand reached out and seized the Tomahawk missile. Chapter 234, Shooting Down a Plane. A wall of a Malibu Shores mansion collapsed as another Tomahawk missile blew away the second-floor balcony. Roar, a roar, even more deafening than a missile explosion, echoed. A massive green figure burst forth from the billowing smoke. The enraged Hulk flew out and grabbed the nearest helicopter. His bucket-thick arms yanked downward, shaking the entire helicopter. Fire! Fire! Kill this monster! Evacuated! The helicopter Hulk was holding, with 2 Gatling guns jutting out from either side, opened fire on the Hulk. Ta-ta-ta! The Gatling gun barrels spun, and thick bullets streaked in fiery red light, raining down on the Hulk. Ordinary bullets were powerless to penetrate the Hulk's defenses, only infuriating him even more. Roar! Roar! Hulk slammed his other hand against the helicopter's window, shattering it and slapping the pilot inside to death. The other 2 helicopters, observing the situation, immediately turned and fired missiles at the Hulk again. Whoosh! 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 Numerous missiles unleashed, striking the Hulk and the helicopter's ammunition depot. Boom! Right helicopter set over the intercom. The remaining 2 helicopters hovered in the sky, and several more missiles roared out. Leah, help me! Tony stood up and extended his hand toward the laboratory on the basement level. A moment later, 5 steel components suddenly flew out. Leah ignored Tony's attention and floated outside the villa, crashing into one of the missiles. Boom! Yaz's eyes suddenly turned red, and 2 parallel beams of light streaked across the sky, prematurely detonating the Tomahawk missiles launched from the helicopter. What the hell is this? The helicopter pilot's face darkened as he saw this. The Hulk was already difficult to deal with, but fortunately, he couldn't fly. They could just sacrifice a helicopter and bring him into the Sea-Man in Black. I'll kill Tony Stark, but, no buts. Don't forget, everything you have now was given to you by God. If you don't complete God's mission, you're dead. The man in sunglasses in the helicopter on the right gave the order, turning his helicopter towards Tony's mansion. The 2 Gatling guns aligned their sights and suddenly opened fire. Ta-da-da! The other one unleashed its full salvo of missiles at Leah. Facing another barrier of missiles, Leah overheard the conversation inside the helicopter and realized the enemy was just a minor figure, and even if captured, he wouldn't know anything. So, he simply killed them. There was no no-killing principle in the Marvel Universe. If they dared to cross him, he'd kill them. Reaching out to grab a Tomahawk missile, still spitting flames from its tail, Leah turned it around, aimed it at the attacking helicopter, and then let go. Whoosh! Boom! Leah had shot down a plane. Inside the mansion, Tony, already suited up in his Mark 42X armor, flew out of the villa. While dodging Gatling gun fire, he raised his hand and fired an energy cannon, striking the helicopter's tail. The helicopter, struck by the tail, instantly lost its balance. No matter how hard the pilot pulled the lever, he couldn't stop the helicopter from plummeting toward the rocks. That guy seems to know something. Tony's mind cleared slightly after hearing this. In a life-or-death struggle, killing the enemy was naturally the most important priority. But now, with the enemy unable to fight back, a prisoner was still useful. Tony lowered his hand. Leah had already flown beneath the helicopter and extended a hand to block the side door. With a creaking sound, the metal buck rolled under Leah's grip. The helicopter, which had been spinning and falling, suddenly came to a sudden stop and was lifted steadily. After landing on the shore, Leah dropped the helicopter onto the ground. Its propellers were still turning, cutting the grass to shreds. With a clang, Tony, wearing his Iron Man suit, dropped from the sky. He stepped forward, smashed the helicopter's window, and pulled the pilot out. "Did they send you?" "Tell me." The pilot, with a shaved head and the appearance of a former soldier, was not at all flustered, but rather excited by Tony's hand. "Tony Stark, you're provoking me. You're dead." With that, the man reached out to grab Tony's armor. His hand radiated an intense heat, destabilizing the nanosteel of the Mark 42X. At that moment, Leah stepped forward, grabbed the man's arm, and yanked hard. Puff! Scalding blood gushed out, spilling onto the lawn and instantly burning the green grass to ash. A heartbreaking wail escaped the man's lips as Leah severed his arm, but the broken part of his arm rapidly healed. Watching this scene, the terrified Tony felt a sense of wonder. He is recovering himself, yes, and there is extremely unstable biological energy in his body. This energy can help cells regenerate and reorganize, but there is also the risk of uncontrolled energy explosion. So, you mean, these people are bombs? Bomb men? Leah nodded, yes, And they are bombs that do not require detonators, men. The man's body was still recovering. Tony went up and punched him, scolding, "Tell me where he is, and I won't kill you, bah." "I won't tell you, Tony Stark. If you have the guts, just kill me, and soon I will let you come down to accompany me." "Ha ha ha, bastard." Tony punched the man a few more times, but he was very stubborn and refused to say anything. "Why don't we give it to Kelson? That guy's great at interrogating prisoners," Leah suggested. "No. Don't give it to S.H.I.E.L.D., they can't do the job. So, you keep an eye on him while I go fix my suit. Oh, I also need to call Pepper Potts." "Wait, did we forget something?" "I feel like we forgot something." Tony scratched his head. Things were so confusing, he couldn't remember what he'd forgotten. "We forgot about the Hulk," Leah said, pointing to the green fat man climbing the rocks. "Emptying my savings again. It's almost the end of the month. Please vote." Chapter 235, 10 Rings Gang. Tony realized that his new suit had a flaw. That was when it encountered high temperatures, the nano-iron would become unstable. Of course, it wasn't just the Mark 42X, other suits would also be affected when exposed to temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees. But now wasn't the time to research this. Leah knocked the captive unconscious, flew to the rocky cliff, and pulled Hulk up, while Tony returned to the basement of his villa. With Hulk and Leah there, Tony's basement was not affected by the explosion, and all the Iron Man suits were intact. After a simple repair to the Mark 42X, Pepper Potts called. "Tony, are you okay? Oh my God, I saw on TV that you were attacked by terrorists." "God, they actually flew an attack helicopter to bomb your house." As soon as the call was connected, Pepper Potts' voice appeared in Tony's ears. "Hey. Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just, the house is damaged. We can just build another one. It's no big deal. Is everything okay at the company?" Tony disassembled the burned parts of his chest, and Jarvis controlled the robotic arm to reassemble them for him. On the other end of the line, Pepper Potts breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Tony was okay. "God bless you, I'm glad you're okay. Tony, promise me you won't mess with terrorists again." "Okay, Pepper, don't worry," Tony agreed, but in his heart he had already sentenced the terrorists to death. "Stay inside the company, don't." Before Tony could finish his words, a noise came from the line, like someone screaming. Pepper, what's going on over there?" "Hello, Tony, someone's breaking in." "God, Killian, what are you doing?" The line was filled with more noise. Listening to Pepper Potts' terrified voice, Tony Stark's anger was at its peak. He roared into the phone, "Whoever you are, if you dare lay a finger on Pepper, I will kill you. I swear." However, Tony's threat fell flat on his face over the phone. A man soon picked up Pepper's phone. "You should be thankful you're still useful to us. Your girlfriend's fine. I'll contact you later. Just wait." With that, he hung up. Asshole. Furious, Tony slammed the phone to the ground, donned his repaired Mark 42X, and flew out. In the yard, the green fat man was playing with a captive like a child finding a toy. He broke the captive's arm, then watched it heal, then broke it again, then healed again. The captive's face flushed with pain, and he screamed at the green fat man to kill him. But, the green fat man said, "You can scream until your throat breaks, and no one will come to save you." Wahahaha. "Lee, Pepper's in danger." Tony uttered these words and flew towards his company at full speed. Leah flicked the green man's head with her finger. "Stop playing. Grab my arm." Then, clutching Leah with one hand and his toy with the other, the green man flew happily off. The video of Tony's coastal villa being attacked by terrorists was circulating everywhere online. Meanwhile, all American television networks were hacked, broadcasting a unified message. "Are you satisfied with my gift? You know who I am, but not where I am. Your country, your so-called elites, are nothing but a pile of shit." On the TV screen, a man dressed in classical Chinese clothing, with his hair tied up in a full beard, walked to the center of the frame. At his feet knelt a white man, more precisely, a high-ranking official in the American government. This time it was him. "Next time it will be your president. No one can challenge me, not the Joker in his Iron Man suit, not any of you." With a bang, the man pulled the trigger, killing the white man beneath him. Washington, D.C., White House. President Okuyama stared at the television screen with a sullen expression. After watching the latest live broadcast from his hands were shaking with anger. "Capture this man. I want you to capture him as quickly as possible. The government officials present sprang into action. Minutes later, the intelligence department deciphered the address from which the video was broadcast. I hope so. President Okuyama leaned back in his office chair, rubbing his temples. Stark Industries was in shambles. Due to another terrorist incursion, the entire massive corporation had been completely emptied. Several ambulances were parked below, taking the seriously injured security guard to the hospital. Tony, Ms. Potts is not in the building. Leah scanned with her X-ray vision and confirmed that the terrorists had evacuated. Tony, still wearing his Iron Man suit, was silent for a moment before approaching the captives brought in by the green fat man. Tell me, where's that bastard? Where did they take Pepper? If you don't tell me, I will cut off every piece of your flesh until you speak. A trace of fear flashed in the prisoner's eyes, but he still turned his head away stubbornly. He looked like he would never speak again. Fuck. 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 Tony rushed over and punched him a few times in frustration. Leo couldn't stand it. This is the street. You will make the public have a negative impact on you if you do this. Then what do you want me to do? They kidnapped Pepper, my Pepper. Leah patted Tony's shoulder. Let me do it. I can use my power to invade this guy's brain and see if I can find some useful information. Would be great if you could, but I can't. I simply forcibly invaded his brain. This process might not yield much useful information, but it will destroy his brain. After explaining this, Leah reached out and, despite the man's frantic resistance, placed his hand on his crown. A faint flash of lightning suddenly erupted from his palm. The man let out a miserable wail, his eyes rolled up, and his body convulsed. Leah had indeed used divine power to invade the man's mind, but after only reading some vague information, the man's brain was reduced to charcoal. Although Leah knew from his past life that Pepper had been captured in Miami, Florida, as a time traveler, revealing information unknown to anyone else was a bit of a stretch, and he also had to prevent his presence or the deviations of the parallel universe from altering the plot. So, Leah found a test subject to try out his new skill, and surprisingly, he actually uncovered some useful information. As expected, the lair had changed slightly. In the storyline, it was originally Miami, Florida, but now it was Fort Lauderdale. Moreover, the Ten Rings organization in this universe is even more powerful than that in the movie universe. Chapter 236, Airdrop Hulk. How is it going? Did you find anything? Tony didn't care about the man's life or death at this moment. His real concern was rescuing his girlfriend, Pepper Potts. Leah let go of his hand, and the man's eyes rolled back before he collapsed to the ground, motionless. It's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Have Jarvis project a map and I'll show you. Iron Man's suit projected a map in front of Leah, who marked a point. This is their base. After receiving the coordinates, Tony snapped his visor shut and instantly flew towards the target. Leah was about to follow, but Bruce Banner weakly asked, should I go with you, or go home on my own? If I do, I can ride an electric scooter. Dr. Banner gestured to a nearby electric scooter. Come on. Leah put his arm around Dr. Banner's shoulder and matched Tony's speed. After flying for nearly 20 minutes, Leah and the other two arrived at the Ten Rings base. It was a heavily guarded manor resembling a medieval castle, even with armed troops patrolling the perimeter. Sure enough, the Ten Rings in this world were far more powerful than in the cinematic universe. Their military might alone was on a completely different level. However, I suggest just throwing the Hulk in there. No amount of other people will help, Leah suggested. Tony had Jarvis scan it. With the current Mark 42X prototype, forcing it through would indeed be a hassle. Agreed, Leah, throw the Hulk in there. Dr. Banner relented, shrinking back behind Tony. Please, could you please ask my opinion, brother? Pepper's been held hostage. You know I'd rather it was me who was held hostage, and the one provoking the terrorists, not Pepper. Tony lifted his steel mask and spoke affectionately to Banner. Seeing Tony's grief-stricken expression, Dr. Banner relented. Okay, I have just one condition. Dr. Banner helplessly raised a finger and said to Leah, don't kick my ass. Wait a minute. Leah scanned the entire base with his X-ray vision. Inside the third low building on the right side of the base is the lab. Pepper seems to be in pain. Pain? What the hell is pain? Hey, can you be more specific? Someone injected Pepper with a drug. Your good friend Rhoda is there too. The two of them walked in. With the Hulk directing the attack, ordinary people were no different from ants. Even mutants injected with the extremis virus would be a piece of cake against the Hulk. 3 were staff members. Who? The mutants, upon seeing Iron Man, immediately surrounded him. Tony raised his hands and fired several energy cannons at their brains. Boom, 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 in terror. Tony, not bothering with these ordinary people, headed straight for the test bench. Tony, are you here to save me? Rhodey, strapped to the test bench, had nearly been injected with extremis. In the nick of time, his best friend, Tony Stark, came to his rescue. But Tony didn't even glance at Rhodey. He simply walked past him and approached Pepper. Pepper, I'm here. Are you okay? Pepper, wearing only a singlet, had been injected with extremis, her entire body red and feverish. Hearing Tony's name, Pepper regained consciousness a little. Tony, it's really you. You're here. I'm feeling so bad. It's okay. I'll get you out right now. Tony tore off the ropes holding Pepper and helped her down from the test bench. Roddy, standing next to him, was completely convinced. Hey, bro, your girlfriend is okay. Can you get me out now? Tony looked at Roddy in surprise. Why are you here, Roddy? I've been calling you for ages, and you're only now noticing me. Pa. You're a scumbag who values women over friends. Roddy felt so bad that he wanted to cry. Feeling sorry for the black man, Leah went up and let him down. Lieutenant Colonel Roddy, we meet again, Mr. Leah, thank you. Roddy flexed his wrist. After Tony confirmed that Pepper was alright, he asked, Roddy, why are you here? I'm here to catch a bastard. Roddy wore a heroic expression. He would never tell Tony that he'd been tricked into Afghanistan by false intelligence, only to be tricked by a mutant infected with the extremis virus. Even his Iron Patriot armor had been stripped away, and ultimately, rendered useless. He was captured by terrorists as a test subject. It was a sad story. Seeing that Tony and the others wanted to ask more, Roddy quickly, what did you inject her with? Is there an antidote? A blonde woman stepped out from among the staff. She looked directly at Tony and said, she was injected with the extremis virus. The funny thing is, it's only thanks to your help that the extremis virus can be administered to humans. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237, Open the door and check the water meter. Extremis. You are, Tony frowned. He felt like he'd been to, he seemed to know this woman. He just couldn't remember her name. Back and forth between the woman and Tony. Tony, explain to me, who is she? And this is the woman who gave me the injection. She is, your ex-girlfriend. No, it was just one night. How can you call her an ex-girlfriend? Hearing this, Pepper flushed with rage, a terrifying heat emanating from her. Damn it, the virus in her body is unstable. Get out of here. She's going to explode. The woman was botanist Maya Hansen, the one who originally proposed extremis. Seeing the scorching heat radiating from Pepper, Maya knew she was going to explode. Tony hadn't expected his girlfriend to explode with just a few words, so he quickly tried to comfort her. Don't be, honey. I admit I was wrong. Please calm down and listen to my explanation, okay? I'm not listening. Pepper was agitated, her body temperature rising. The other staff members rushed out. Roddy grimaced. He wanted to run too, but Tony wouldn't let him go, and he felt embarrassed. He could only touch Leah's arm. Mr. Leah, please do something. Pepper's going to explode. We're so close. If it explodes, we'll all be vaporized instantly. Nonsense. You're the only one who'll be vaporized. Tony turned and corrected Roddy. Leah walked over to Pepper, took a deep breath, and then suddenly blew it out. A cold breath. This was a superhuman ability, but Leah rarely used it. As Leah blew the cold air, Pepper's scorching heat was instantly cooled, and even her fiery red skin gradually became covered in a layer of frost. Maya Hansen's face was filled with disbelief. She had never seen such a method of stabilizing the extremis virus. After all, the temperature generated by the extremis virus reaches over 3,000 degrees Celsius. Even a large industrial freezer couldn't contain such a high temperature. After calming down, Pepper looked at Tony with horror. What's wrong with me, Tony? I want to go home. The Iron Man suit instantly nanoscaled, shrinking into 5 components. Tony reached out and hugged his girlfriend. Don't worry, everything will be fine. I'm here. He then looked at Maya virus. After being injected with Extremis, the chance of survival is less than 50%. Clearly, Pepper had lucked out. Hey, listen, I believe you had good intentions, but now your research is being used by terrorists to spread panic. You used to be a good girl, but you shouldn't be like this now. Get out of here and help me research the antidote for Extremis. Tony launched into a barrage of words, and Maya bowed her head. I didn't realize my boss was working for. I just wanted to research Extremis. Her boss is Aldrich Killian. He's working for. Pepper remarked that it was this guy who kidnapped her. At the mention of Aldrich Killian, Rhoda weakly reminded her, yes, that guy. He drove my Iron Patriot to kidnap the president. Leaves, Maya said. Then let's try to capture. Maybe we can use him to force Aldrich Killian into releasing the president. That was Tony's plan. Given the current situation, the key is to capture the leader first. Catching the leader will solve everything. It's not that Tony doesn't care about the president's safety. Rhoda thought about it, realizing it made sense, and nodded. Okay, I'll do as you say. They all headed out. Ring's members were either dead or fleeing, leaving the ground littered with corpses. The 2 women frowned, unable to bear the stench of blood. Have the Hulk escort you 2 ladies out. Tony and I will handle the rest. Leah suggested Pepper and the others leave first. He wanted to confirm whether this universe's leader was an actor. He had seen many different things in the mind of the previous captive. This was the 10 Rings of this world, not founded by Aldrich Killian, but a long-established underground organization. Of course, the headquarters had been demolished by the Hulk. Initially, Pepper was reluctant to leave, but only after Tony's repeated persuasion did she agree. Hulk, my best friend, can you take Pepper and Maya away from here? Tony asked the green, chubby man in front of him, his face sincere. Friends? Hulk uttered a word he understood. Friends don't fight. Yeah, friends don't fight. Friends help each other. Will you help me, my friend? Tony's ability to deceive people was no less impressive than Leah's. Hulk pondered the situation, nodded, and asked in a muffled voice, what do you want me to do? Take Pepper and Maya away from here. Once you're out of the base, you can take a taxi back. Okay, brother, I knew you were reliable. Tony patted Hulk's sturdy arm, kissed Pepper goodbye, and then looked towards the largest palace in the 10 Rings base. Inside, a bearded old man was oblivious to the situation outside. Only a few people remained in the 10 Rings base. My dears, I've kept you waiting for a long time. Let's continue the battle. Ha, at this moment, was taking a pill in the toilet. He laughed and threw himself on the bed, making the 2 beauties on the bed jump for joy. The door was blown open by an energy shell. Don't move, check the water meter. Lieutenant Colonel Rhodey rushed in immediately, pointing his gun at the 3 naked people on the bed. Oh my god, we're done for. Raised his hands consciously and slowly got off the bed. Looking at the mess in the room, Rhodey had a strange expression on his face. Tony, Leah, is this guy? Chapter 238. Tony lifted the visor of his Iron Man suit and stepped forward to examine the disheveled, surrendering old man. He said uncertainly, it's him, right? But why does it feel so strange? He'd seen him on live TV as a powerful figure, his eyes filled with murderous arrogance. How had he ended up here? Could it be a body double? Tony couldn't think of any other plausible explanation. Rhoda simply couldn't connect the dots between this filthy, perverted old man and the mastermind behind the string of terrorist attacks, the scheme to steal his Iron Patriot suit, and the kidnapping of the president. They couldn't be more different. Tony walked up to the old man, raised his palm and pointed it at him, the energy cannon in his palm ready to fire. Are you a thief? Tell me, where did you kidnap the president? Faced with the two's questioning, the thief smiled ingratiatingly. Don't kill me. I'm telling the truth. I'm a thief, but I'm just an actor. I don't know anything else. Leah's eyes fell on the rings on the old man's fingers. Each of his 10 fingers wore an exquisite ring. They looked dazzling. Actor, let me see your rings, Leah said. Tony and Rhoda were confused, but they didn't stop him. They watched silently as the old man held out his hand and raised the rings on all 10 fingers. Rings, haha, they're just a few decorations. I'll give them to you if you want them. Just, don't kill me. The old man gave a flattering smile and stood up, as if to drag the rings to Leah. In the next second, his hands swung out quickly. A beam of light from his left hand, a bolt of lightning from his right, shot out at Lee and Tony from the left and right. Zzz. Boom. Lee rarely dodged mortal attacks, but when the golden ring on the old man's left hand emitted a slicing beam, he sensed a sense of extreme danger. He dodged suddenly, only to be slightly grazed by the beam on his chest. His battle suit was ripped, and even Lee's steel body was scratched. The wound, before blood had flowed, had already healed. Atomic-level slicing beam, Lee's face paled. As for Tony, it was different. Warning. Warning. The suit is charging to 400%, charging me. Tony, startled, backhandedly unleashed an energy blast. With a boom, the wall in front of him collapsed instantly, sending two blonde women hiding nearby screaming in terror. The three ignored them as the savior vanished. When he reappeared, he was dressed in classical Taoist robes. He seemed to have returned to the savior who hides with panic and despair. Clap, clap, clap. Great. I didn't fool you. I always thought my acting was pretty good. You're just a psycho. Tony entered combat mode again, while Rode looked genuinely annoyed. Without his Iron Patriot suit and holding only a small pistol, he felt completely out of place in this kind of battle. Can you tell me what's going on? So he's right. He had just been a lecherous, sleazy old man. How could his demeanor change so suddenly? Wasn't in a rush to attack. He clasped his hands behind his back and regarded the three with interest. I'm not lying. I am, and I'm an actor. You might not believe this, but I'm almost 200 years old. In my long life, many things have lost their meaning. Playing other roles gives me a little joy. Over 200 years old? Haha, Lee was really embarrassed to criticize him. At 200 years old, he dared to act so arrogantly in front of him. Not to mention his own idiotic goddess, even the Ledatra known to this world was over 1,000 years old. 200 years was nothing to Lee Yam. Then why did you kidnap President Okuyama? Do you still want to rule the world? Rode asked. No, it wasn't me who kidnapped the president. It was my dog, reached out and shook his finger. 13 years ago, I adopted a down-and-out stray dog. Oh. Come to think of it, that dog had a connection with you, Tony Stark. That night, you broke his heart. The word sent a chill down Tony's spine. Fuck, what does it have to do with me? Do I have to cooperate with just anyone who asks me to? I just gave him a way out that day. If I had arrogantly rejected him, would you have thought I was right? Tony felt helpless. Back then, he wasn't Iron Man yet, he was just a playboy and businessman. Hearing this, laughed. Yes, you have a point, but you should tell Killian that. He's been plotting revenge on you for over a decade. No matter what role you play in this conspiracy, you must have Killian release the president immediately, or I will arrest you too. Rode pointed a gun at. This farce seemed to be Killian's sole responsibility, but without this man's covert help, Killian wouldn't have had a chance to strike back. With Rode pointing a gun, snorted coldly. He waved his right hand, and the black ring on his pinky finger flashed. In an instant, the light in the room was absorbed. It was daytime, but now it was pitch black. Damn it. Why is my energying so quickly? Tony tried to turn on the Iron Man suit's lights, but the surroundings remained utterly dark, echoed in the Iron Man suit's ears. As he reached out to pull Tony away, several ice spikes shot through the ground. That's the power of the blue ring on his left pinky finger. Wow, you can actually adapt to absolute darkness. How interesting, S voice echoed in the darkness. Then try this. The ring on his left ring finger emitted an invisible shockwave, and Tony and Rode's mind seemed to plummet into a bottomless abyss, with countless terrifying images echoing in their minds. Tony, you guys should leave first. Go save the president. Locating the Iron Patriot will lead to finding the president. This level of mental interference had no effect on Lee Yam. He casually tossed Tony and Rode out of the room, and they quickly returned to normal, took a few steps forward, standing in front of Lee Yam with a casual smile, saying, "Who are you? Why can't my power affect you?" Any mindless comments will be deleted. Comments are welcome, as are any inappropriate plot points and personal opinions in the book review. But please don't use insulting language. The author hopes everyone can enjoy the book peacefully and avoid taking things too seriously. Chapter 239, 10 Commandments. Lee had only speculated before, but now that he had witnessed wielding the power of the 10 rings, he knew this parallel universe didn't follow the same pattern. As expected, in a world of infinite parallel universes, Only a fool would use episodes from past lives to speculate about the unknown, and this world seemed to be a cultivator, as his basic attributes far surpassed those of ordinary people. It was from this that Li Ye determined he was no ordinary human. According to the system's power classification, S basic strength reached the upper level of Blue Elite. And that didn't even factor in the power of his 10 magic rings. Judging by the power of the 10 rings he had just unleashed, possessed powerful magical powers, including mind control, absolute darkness, frost shock, and beams. With the 10 rings in hand, S combined strength was unparalleled across the entire Earth. You are cutting to death for aiding and participating in terrorist acts, kidnapping civilians and the President of the United States. Li Ye didn't answer his question, but silently read out his charges. Initially looked at Li Ye with disdain. He didn't pursue worldly power, not because he'd seen through the mundane world, but because he simply disdained it. Just like Loki, the self-proclaimed extraordinary lord, he felt himself transcendent. But as he finished his words, he felt a vague sense of being bound by invisible shackles. What's going on? I see, you're a cultivator too. Lord's gaze grew intense. I've been stuck at a bottleneck for years. I never expected to meet a cultivator now. It seems like a heaven-sent opportunity for a breakthrough. With that, the old man opened his hands and clenched them tightly. 10 magic rings shone brightly. A powerful magical energy surged from the rings, circling around them before immersing himself in Lord's body. The next second, Lord's aura shifted, like a ferocious beast breaking free from its chains. His aged body sped with incredible speed, vanishing in an instant. He flashed before Li Ye, his fists whirling with various powers as he unleashed a mighty punch. You're truly remarkable, Li Ye whispered, then took up his stance and delivered his own punch. The punch was ordinary, simple, and unremarkable, like a casual throw from a newly minted apprentice. But it felt like Li Ye's punch wasn't a fist, but a mountain. Impossible, S mind raced. He was a cultivator, his perception far superior to that of ordinary people, and naturally, he could sense Li Ye's terrifying power even more than ordinary people. Feelings were feelings, but cultivators relied on strength frantically increased the burst of 10 commandments energy. Wow, he grunted, flying backwards, blood gushing from his mouth. Looking at lying on the ground, spewing blood, Li Ye was surprised. He's not dead. Li Ye was surprised that was still alive after exchanging punches with him. Even if he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, it was a sign of strength, very strong. The blow dimmed the light of the 10 rings for a moment, and the absolute darkness suddenly vanished, allowing sunlight to once again stream into the palace. Li Ye turned to glance outside. Tony and Rhoda had already left to rescue the President of the United States. Without an audience, Li Ye didn't bother to engage in further entanglement with the thunder. With a soft shout, thunder crackled in the sky. Li Ye's divine lightning bolts danced between his fingers, and then he pointed them at them from afar. Li Ye cast thunder. He immediately assumed that Li Ye was one of his own. He raised his hands, and the light of the 10 rings flashed once more, frantically tried to block Li Ye's thunderbolts. Frost blasts, slicing beams, lightning storms, explosions of fire. But the thunder he faced, like a spear that could pierce the heavens, instantly shattered those attacks and descended upon him. Just as the lightning was about to pierce his body, he seemed to grit his teeth and, with all his strength, roared, matter reorganization. The moment the lightning struck, S body turned into a pile of loose sand, and only after the lightning passed did it reassemble. Li Ye's second move hadn't killed, and he was embarrassed. If the opponent was a supreme mage, Li Ye could accept it, but he was just a mortal with a magic ring, unable to surpass human limits. Come again. Li Ye struck a decisive blow this time. Thunder flashed in his hand, and a terrifying pressure took shape. Wait. Please wait, could no longer contain his anger, tumbling backwards in fear as he watched the radiant lightning in Li Ye's hand. He cried out, "Don't kill me. I've already grasped a glimmer of hope for godhood. You're a cultivator too, so why associate with mortals? If you're willing, I can help you achieve godhood." Li Ye smiled and shook his head. Godhood, so you never realized what you were facing? S eyes froze at this. If he hadn't considered this before the fight, then witnessing Li Ye's power now, even if only a fraction, made feel the difference. And this gap wasn't one of strength, but one of level. Damn it, S goal in cultivation was to reach the ethereal realm of the gods. He hadn't expected to reach that level before provoking a powerful being of that realm. No wonder he was so vulnerable before him. The other party was a god. Gods must not be insulted. Insulting them means death. Having grasped this, lost the courage to continue fighting Li Yan. He clenched his hands tightly, unleashing the power of the 10 Commandments beneath his feet, and he soared into the air like an immortal, swiftly fleeing. Watching's last-ditch effort, like a trapped beast, Li Yan locked onto him with divine power, striking with a sudden thunderbolt. Escape? How could I possibly let you escape? With a crash, thunder pierced the void, meeting every attack unleashed. Frost blast, shatter. Slicing beam, shatter. Lightning storm, shatter. Flame explosion, shatter. After piercing the entire unleashed attack of the 10 Commandments, the thunder pierced his body like a shard of the heavens. Chapter 240, Call for Support. Soaring through the air like an immortal, was pierced through the heart by a bolt of lightning from Li Yan. He plummeted from the sky, crashing directly onto the palace, shattering a massive hole in the 3-story base, and slamming himself to the ground. The blue stone floor, centered on, radiated outward like a spiderweb in all directions. Obsessed with becoming a god, never imagined his death at the hands of a god. If he had the choice again, even if he continued to play the old man he was, he would never have dared to kill a true god. Li Forward was already dead, and the 10 rings in his hands dimmed. Li removed the rings and sensed the magical vibrations within. The power of the rings was somewhat similar to that of the Philosopher's Stone, but vastly different from mainstream Marvel magic. The energy fluctuations of the 10 rings are very weak, and they require artificial cultivation, which is very troublesome. If the 6 Infinity Stones were placed before him, it would have been a truly captivating sight, but his rings were 100 times different from the Infinity Stones. They're simply not on the same level. Forget it, just throwing them away isn't a big deal. Let's put these toys away for now. Whoever wants to play with them can play with them later. Li placed the 10 bracelet into a silver bracelet and looked off into the distance. Tony and the others should have already located the Iron Patriot mech and gone to rescue the president. In the evening, at the harbor of Pensacola, a massive crane was strapped to the current president of the United States, wearing Iron Patriot armor. Mount Ogwen. At the foot of Mount Ogwen, an industrial furnace, as hot as lava, had long been prepared. On the top floor of a steel structure, the high-spirited Killian was about to live broadcast the deep frying of the president to the world that night. A circle of high-definition cameras had been placed in the most suitable corners, and he was waiting for the person who had stood him up, causing Killian to experience despair. Tony Stark. Especially after the Battle of New York, Iron Man Tony Stark was hailed as a superhero. This infuriated Killian, for in his view, Tony was nothing but a despicable villain, unworthy of the title of superhero incompetence, and make the world experience the despair of being dominated by him. Meanwhile, Tony, the man Killian had been dreaming of for over a decade, was hiding behind a shipping container at the port, scouting the enemy from afar. "How is it going, Tony? How many men are there?" Rhodey asked expectantly, still clutching his pistol. Tony had just had Jarvis scan the port, gaining a relatively comprehensive understanding of the enemy's combat power distribution. "Well, let me put it this way, they have over 300 men. Over 100 are guarding the various entrances, and the rest are divided into 4 teams, patrolling back and forth. Are they all extremists? Perhaps. Judging by their body temperatures, extremists' normal body temperature is much higher than that of normal people." "That's right, they're all extremists." Rhodey rubbed his brow, feeling the pressure mount. These were super soldiers injected with the extremist virus. And they were well equipped. Facing such an opponent, without the strength of an entire regiment, there was no way they could defeat them. "Tony, what should we do now? Should we wait for Li to arrive, or should we charge in now?" Rhodey was a soldier. He couldn't leave the president hanging, facing the possibility of being live-bombed by terrorists. Even if it meant death, he wouldn't hesitate to charge in and die. As for Tony, he knew he was wearing a prototype nanotechnology suit, and its firepower couldn't match Rhodey's Iron Patriot. So, soloing the extremist dungeon with that kind of equipment was a death sentence. He was silent for a moment, as if conversing with Jarvis, then said, "You wait 30 seconds. Reinforcements will arrive in 30 seconds. "What reinforcements?" Li Rhodey asked. "No," Tony pointed to the sky. "My Iron Legion will be here soon." A vast number of Iron Man suits flew in from the horizon. The 30-second countdown ended, and over 30 Iron Man suits, now controlled and idle by Jarvis, hovered in the sky in rows. The sight of these rows of Iron Man suits in the sky made Rhodey's eyes sparkle. I finally understand why you numbered this suit Mark 42X. You must have 35 Iron Man suits before you. By the way, can you give me one? Rhodey said he still used a pistol, and this kind of equipment would be embarrassing. Okay, pick one, but let me tell you, these are prototypes, Tony said, and then took off first. Tony designed these Iron Man suits under immense anxiety. His original intention was to create a perfect suit, but no matter how he designed it, there would always be some flaw. That was until Lee opened the door to nanotechnology for him. Nanotechnology's greatest advantage lies in its adaptability, allowing the suits to develop various functions based on the combat environment. In theory, that's how it works. The moment Tony's Iron Man suits appeared, the extremists on guard spotted them. Boss, a large number of Iron Man robots have appeared from the southwest 210 direction, an extremist soldier reported. He didn't need to report, as Killian, standing on the top floor of the steel structure, had already seen them. His face was grim. Tony Stark, we've finally found him. All soldiers, prepare to fight. If you spot Tony Stark, hand him over to me, Killian ordered all soldiers via the communicator. Tony, on his side, flew towards the president. A small group of extremist soldiers on the second-level viaduct of the steel structure spotted him and opened fire on their Mark 42Xs with their machine guns. Boom! A volley of energy cannons blazed, and the extremists dodged. The overpass instantly melted, sending the extremists plummeting. But for mutants infected with the extremist virus, a height of tens of meters posed no threat. Tony, I'll help you, Rhodey, donning a blue iron suit, flanked Tony to assist. Jarvis controlled the remaining Iron Suit units, who dealt with the influx of extremist soldiers. A fierce battle erupted, and the harbor was instantly engulfed in the roar of gunfire. Roddy, I'll cover you. Go save the president. Tony flew low, repeatedly darting in around the squadron, unleashing energy cannons. The extremist virus was a particularly troublesome variant. As long as their heads weren't blasted, they were practically invincible. The massive explosions injured many, but almost none. Their injuries were even healing at a visible rate. Chapter 241, Battle of Port P. On Christmas Eve, the entire port of Pensacola was ablaze with fireworks. Jarvis, with his immense computing power, unified the command of all the Iron suits. After realizing that a large-scale explosion wouldn't completely kill the extremists, over 30 Iron suits dispatched a single squad. The Iron suits coordinated effectively, rapidly eliminating numerous extremists. However, the enemy held a significant numerical advantage. Facing the Iron Suit charge, the extremists banded together, abandoning conventional weapons and harnessing their powerful bioheat to melt and destroy the suits, escalating the situation into a horrific state. While Tony and the Iron suits held off the extremists, Rhodey flew alone to the base of the crane. President Gwen, I'm here to save you, Lieutenant Colonel Rhodey. Thank God, get me out of this hellhole. The moment O'Kanchan saw Rhodey, well, tears in his eyes. Though he wore the Iron Patriot suit, he couldn't operate it. Hanging there for an entire afternoon, he began to question his fate. Several extremists were already waiting nearby. Today was a dismal day for Rhodey. From the moment he was tricked into Afghanistan, he was ambushed and kidnapped at the Ten Rings base. Lee finally rescued him, only to be tormented by the extremists surrounding him. Rhodey rushed forward without a word, punching one of them in the head, blasting it apart. That's the feeling, Rhodey cried inwardly, but his surroundings remained calm. He then unleashed a kick, then raised his hands and finished with 2 powerful energy blasts. However, just as he'd finished off a few, at least 3 more groups emerged from above the shipping container. Upon seeing Rhodey, they charged, machine guns drawn. Gunfire and bullets posed little threat to the Iron Man suit, but such a barrage of attacks couldn't be ignored. Rhodey held his composure, using the suit's standard extremist headshot to dispatch them one by one. But the enemy was simply too numerous. A figure from above leaped upon Rhodey, stretching out red-blooded hands and desperately tearing at his helmet. The Iron Man suit couldn't withstand the heat, so Rhodey reached out and pulled down the one who had jumped behind him. Dogs. Damn it. What a bunch of lunatics. Lieutenant Colonel Rhodey, overwhelmed by the extremists' frenzy, ignored the men tearing at his suit and simply revved his engines, soaring into the air. Watching his armor peel away piece by piece, Rhodey decided to act decisively. He pointed toward the president. Jarvis, do me a favor, eject me. The Iron Man suit remained within Jarvis's control. Upon hearing Rhodey's request, Jarvis consulted Tony. With a thud, Rhodey flew out of the suit, leaping towards Mount Okuyama. In mid-air, Lieutenant Colonel Roddy embraced the president, who was suspended by 2 steel cables. Behind him, the Iron Patriot stumbled and fell, carrying several extremists with him, into the furnace below. Boom! The extremists were like walking super bombs. As they landed in the furnace, they erupted in a violent explosion. In an instant, flames shot up into the sky. Looking down at the scene below, Roddy's hands went cold, and he felt a wave of fear. But his military instincts quickly helped him recover. Mr. President, don't worry. I'll get you out. After comforting President Okuyama, Roddy held him with one hand and, with the other, drew his pistol from his waist and fired several shots at the steel cable holding the president's right hand. The cable snapped, and Roddy and the president swung through the sea of flames like a swing. Tony, I've rescued the president. We can evacuate. Roddy and President Okuyama landed safely. He had the president remove his Iron Patriot suit, and the Iron Patriot was back online. That's great. You guys go ahead, I'm in some trouble. Tony panted heavily on the other end of the line. Bang, 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 explosions echoed, as if a fierce battle were raging. Do you need help over there? Rhodey asked, worried about his best friend. Forget about help. Are you comfortable leaving the president alone? Tony hit the nail on the head. Rhodey was a soldier. His first priority was to rescue the president, a mission he wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice his life for. Now that the president was out of danger, Rhodey's first priority was naturally to get him back safely. Well, anyway, Leo will be here soon. Hang on, Tony. With that, Rhodey grabbed the still-dazed Okuyama and fled the port of Pensacola. At the top of the steel structure, Killian tore off Tony's arm, radiating a crimson glow. He kicked Tony in the chest, and the nanoscale steel instantly disintegrated. Heartbroken I was that night. Killian, shirtless, his muscular body ablaze with crimson blood, the extremis virus taking effect. Tony nearly spat out blood when he heard this. But he couldn't defeat him now. That's right, he couldn't. Even though Tony had spent countless gold on his Iron Man suit, it was completely outmatched by Killian's fire-boosting and infinite health-regenerating cheats. Was this the proverbial saying that money can change fate? No. It wasn't like that. There's nothing in this world that money can't solve. If there's, it means you haven't spent enough. Killian, sorry, I can't remember your name. You're a loser. You were over a decade ago, and you're still a loser now. When it came to verbal attacks, Tony was undeterred. Even when beaten to the ground, he never failed to unleash his sarcasm. Killian had thought that if he could knock Tony to the ground, he'd beg for mercy. Only then would Killian truly enjoy the thrill of a slap in the face. You used to be indifferent to me, but now I'm out of your reach. But instead of begging for mercy, Tony continued to taunt him, calling him a loser. Go to hell, you bastard. Enraged by Tony, Killian raised his right hand, his arm blazing red from the heat, and slammed it down on Tony's chest. Just as his arm was about to fall, Tony suddenly flipped over and leaped from the top of the steel structure. Jarvis, give me a suit. The Mark 42X was shattered beyond repair, so Tony leaped into the air and changed into a new outfit. A red suit that was twice as large as the ordinary Iron Man suit flew into the air and expanded towards Tony. It only closed again after Tony got inside the suit. Chapter 242, Anti-Hulk Concept Machine. Tony landed with a thud in his new suit, a massive one, radiating crimson. Following Leah's suggestion, he'd enlarged and increased its power to counter the Hulkbuster concept. Though a concept, its sheer power surpassed all previous versions. Today, I'll use you to test out the Hulkbuster concept and see how effective and destructive it is. After donning the suit, Tony shifted into combat mode, and the suit began its first transformation. The steel exterior restructured, its limbs becoming thicker. The arc energy reactor on Tony's chest was also protected by layers of steel. The surrounding extremists gathered around him. Though the battle was brief, Tony's Iron Man suits were drastically reduced in number, with at least 30 extremists appearing alongside him. Tony, face it. You're just a mortal hiding in an Iron Man suit, but I'm different. I've transcended the realm of mere mortals. I now control your life and death. Killian's voice rang out as he leaped down from the top floor of the steel structure, landing in front of Tony. Although the president had been rescued, Killian believed that as long as he defeated Tony Stark, he hadn't lost. Tony's suit, reconfigured, stood nearly 2 meters tall, completely encased in thick steel armor. Can I defeat these men as quickly as possible, sir? Your weapons and equipment aren't enough to kill them instantly. Considering the enemy's characteristics, you should avoid being surrounded. Tony finally understood Jarvis's intention. He was trying to get him to back down. But if Tony backed down, he wouldn't be Iron Man. Hey, you think you're in a big way just because you're in a big way? Do you know why I rejected you? Because I saw you the first time I saw you, you'd never amount to anything. These words undoubtedly opened the man's wounds and rubbed salt into them. Killian knew Tony was provoking him, but after being injected with the Extremis virus, once he got angry, it was difficult for him to calm down. Arrogant Tony Stark, then let me prove to you who the loser is. Before he could finish his words, Killian's muscles tensed and he rushed forward, swinging his arm, which was nearly 3,000 degrees of heat, high in the air. He punched Tony's suit. However, Tony remained expressionless, calmly observing Killian's attack path within his suit. As the man was about to reach him, he threw a punch in horror. When Killian's fist collided with the steel, a crackling sound of molten metal echoed, dissolving Tony's fist in the suit, but Killian's hand bones were also broken. A broken arm was nothing to an Extremis warrior. The Extremis virus Killian had injected himself with was a potent version. But the moment he pulled his arm back, the protruding steel plate on Tony's arm shifted downward, forming a steel mesh that climbed up Killian's arm, quickly covering the entire arm. Got you. Having captured Killian's arm, Tony raised his hand and slammed him into the ground. With a loud bang, the ground cracked. But that wasn't enough. Tony's armor pinned Killian to the ground with one hand, hammering his entire arm like a pile driver. Watching their boss being pinned to the ground, the surrounding underlings could no longer bear it. They rushed forward and launched a formative attack on Tony. Jarvis, report the suit damage rate, Tony demanded hurriedly to harm him for a while. With more and more Extremis surrounding him, Tony saw the damage rate was about to exceed half. He immediately ordered, Jarvis, move while remaining protection to the front, sir, that will quickly breach your back. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. Quick, Tony, holding Killian down, hammered into the ground with all his might, his continuous blows causing the surrounding ground to collapse. He didn't care whether Killian was dead or alive. Once his steel had formed a sufficient shield in front of him, Tony, holding Killian's hand, suddenly detonated a powerful energy cannon. The next second, a terrifyingly high temperature erupted, flames spreading from the ground, radiating in all directions. Boom. Killian was an elite mutant after all, and his explosion far exceeded the temperature of ordinary Excalibur. A volcanic blast of flames swept through, melting the layers of steel blocking Tony's path instantly. Finally, at the last layer, Tony Stark was flung back by the force, falling heavily to the ground. Ugh, 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 Tony rolled on the ground in pain, suppressing the urge to vomit blood. He touched his body, thankfully no limbs were missing, and he felt a sudden sense of relief. Looking at the center of the explosion, a huge crater had been blasted into the ground. The Excalibur warriors nearby were instantly vaporized, and those further away, even the strongest ones, had half their bodies blown off. They were practically all destroyed. The explosion temperature of an ordinary Excalibur was only 3,000 degrees Celsius, but Killian's explosion had reached at least 6,000 degrees Celsius. Fortunately, Tony's suit was thick enough, otherwise he wouldn't be lying there intact. Jarvis, are there any more suits? Tony didn't know if any Extremis were still around. Without his Iron Man suit, he felt deeply insecure. Jarvis' voice quickly rang through Tony's headphones. Please wait, the remaining suits are in action and will be arriving soon. Okay, Tony sighed, pushing himself up and struggling to stand. Just then, he saw a bloody mess at the center of the explosion, wriggling. Oh my god. This thing can't die. Before Tony could rush over to investigate, the bloody mess slowly regained some semblance of human form. It was missing an arm, its body had collapsed for a long time, and the rest of its body was cracking and festering, with blood seemingly flowing out as thick as magma. I said, I would kill you. The bloody mess uttered a hoarse voice like a broken record, and Tony's eyelids twitched. You're in such a state, why bother? Tony retreated, manipulating the remaining parts of the Mark 42X to reassemble. However, the Mark 42X was severely damaged, the nano-steel covering only one arm and a small portion of Tony's body. The other party, unconcerned with his own condition, smiled. The Mandarin will help me heal. You know, The Mandarin has shown me divine power. You can't imagine how powerful the Mandarin was. Oh, the Mandarin is dead, a discordant voice rings echoed. Killian, who was no longer in human form, was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the intruder and roared, "Impossible. The Mandarin was so powerful. How could he be dead?" "You lied to me, powerful." Liya slowly floated down from midair. He smiled and pulled out 10 from his silver bracelet, waving them in front of Killian's face. "Don't worry, your Mandarin passed away peacefully. Now, it's your turn." Seeing the Mandarin's 10 rings, Killian's last psychological defenses collapsed. It could be said that the Mandarin was his greatest support, but now, after all the hard work he had put in for so long, the Mandarin was actually dead. Chapter 243, Future Variables. Killian was devastated upon learning of his father's death, but before he died, he tried to drag Tony down with him. However, just as Leo was about to explode, he took a deep breath. A refreshing, cold breath, bringing us closer, instantly froze Killian like a popsicle. "Leah, you're just in time." Tony clenched the remaining nanosteel in his arm and punched Killian, crushing him to pieces. Unsatisfied, Tony stomped on the debris. "On the way, I ran into Aoguan He." "Oh no, his name is Aoguanshan. I ran into President Aoguanshan. He chatted with me for a while and even invited me to the White House for tea." "Well, let's not talk about that for now. There are still many extremists around here that we haven't dealt with yet. Do you want to?" Tony hadn't finished his words when Leah glanced around. The next second, his thermal vision continued to flash, and as he looked around, the entire port of Pensacola was filled with explosions. "Okay, now that the enemy's gone, let's go back. By the way, do you want to study the 10 rings? The Philosopher's Stone inside can be attached to the Iron Man suit, which should enhance your combat abilities." Leah still hadn't collected the 10 magic rings he'd shown Killian, so he asked Tony if he wanted them. After all, they were of little use to Leah. Tony glanced at them, recalling the power if I attach these to my Iron Man suit, won't it become like the powerful things usually corrupt the mind? Leah was baffled by these words. Powerful? Come on, only the inexperienced would consider these treasures. To you, the Philosopher's Stone inside is just for enhancing the Iron Man suit, not for learning cultivation. Do you want them? With your suit attached, you can easily defeat the Hulk. Don't be like that. The Hulk is our friend. Tony was tempted, but he still tried to decline. Don't forget it. No, I want it. I want it. Seeing Leah about to take the 10 rings back, Tony quickly stepped forward and spread his hands. Even Tony Stark was a handout. Accepting the 10 rings, Tony coughed softly. All right, let's go back. Pepper's been injected with the extremis virus. I wonder if we can even find an antidote. After all, sleeping with someone who could explode with excitement, Tony was panicking. Leah patted Tony's shoulder. Don't worry, we'll find it. After all, your mother from over a decade ago is back to help you research. Hearing Leah mention Maya Hansen, Tony rolled his eyes. What a ridiculous topic. With the extremis dead, Jarvis had the remaining Iron Man suits returned, and Tony donned one, preparing to go home, the void behind him. What's wrong, Leah? Nothing, maybe it was just my imagination. I just felt like someone was watching us. Jarvis, scan the area. Are there any more enemies? Thermal imaging scan, sir. There are no enemies around. While Jarvis scanned, Leah used his X-ray vision to search carefully, even radiating his divine power, but still found nothing unusual. After pondering for a while, with no clue, he decided to go back with Tony. An invisible wall separated a mirror dimension from reality. Leah and Tony were on one side of reality, while on the other side, in the mirror dimension, the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One, clad in a yellow martial arts uniform, watched Leah's retreating figure intently. From the moment Leah and the Ancient One had been watching the battle from the mirror dimension. Leah's final glance back had sent a chill through the Ancient One's heart. See, the Ancient One could foresee the future, but the future was so uncertain that even he dared not pry too deeply. The so-called secrets of heaven must not be revealed. Once the future is known, any minor change will trigger a butterfly effect, with immeasurable consequences for the future. And Lee's appearance is the greatest unpredictable change in this world. For this period, the Ancient One has been observing Lee, considering how to best shape the future. Fortunately, Lee hasn't done anything out of the ordinary. Like killing or misleading people who could play a crucial role in a future crisis, the Ancient One must ensure their safety. If Lee were to do so, he would not hesitate to take action against Lee. Perhaps his existence is a good thing. The Ancient One stood there for a long time, sighing. If it weren't for the fate of another Sorcerer Supreme appearing, he would have almost taken him in as his apprentice. With a sigh, the Ancient One reached out and welded a portal in the void had been bombed by terrorists. While not completely destroyed, it would take at least 10 days or a month to repair. Of course, Tony had no intention of repairing it. He'd been wanting to move for a while, but he'd just never found a good reason. The destruction of the coastal mansion had just suited Tony's desire. I have a newly built mansion in Brooklyn, but it's not even operational yet. I plan to put it to good use. I want to build a professional research team in the fields of energy and nanotechnology, and of course, a medical team, and a larger laboratory. The previous coastal mansion was too small, Tony said after lulling his agitated girlfriend to sleep. He returned to the living room and addressed Lee and Dr. Banner. Dr. Banner agreed. Thanks to the Battle of New York and Director Fury's guarantee, the military had lifted the warrant for Dr. Banner's arrest, and he could now live a normal life. I just want to know when we can search my universe. Lee wasn't interested in Tony's decision. To him, the Marvel Universe was just a stop on his journey. In his own universe, he had a whole bunch of brothers waiting for him to return, a silly goddess, a little girl, and a very obedient maid. Tony sensed that Leah would eventually leave, and his expression grew serious. Leah, if possible, I hope you'll stay. Whatever you want, money, fame, or, as he spoke, Tony even laughed, unable to believe he'd actually said such a thing. Even if someone possessed immense power, scientific knowledge beyond their time, or anything else, Tony, a cocky playboy, rarely took anyone seriously. Pepper Potts was the first, but Leah. Was this a kind of trust born from experiencing life and death? Of course, the so-called experience of life and death was only one-sided, applied to Tony. Leah smiled too. Hey, brother, I have everything I need, I understand. Tony nodded, and fell silent. Dr. Banner, sensing a jarring atmosphere, quickly suggested, how about we go get a late-night snack tonight? Ms. Pepper's problem won't be solved in a day. Tony, what you need most right now is some relaxation, okay? Have you ever had kebab? I know a place in New York that's insane, Tony suggested. Leah and Banner had no objections, and that night, the three of them went to eat Turkish kebab together. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Whose welding technology is the best? It was 2 a.m. After a late-night snack, Leah, Tony, and Dr. Banner went to a bar for a few drinks. They partied late into the night before returning to Stark Industries. Tony and Banner went to bed after their return, but Leah, still feeling energetic, left his room and flew to the rooftop of Stark Industries. After gazing for a long time, Leah suddenly spoke into the void, "Come out. Are you determined to stalk me 24/7? The voice, like a soliloquy, vanished into the vast darkness like a stone sinking into the sea. For a moment, the feeling of being watched vanished. The identity of the other party was clear. With a clang, like a shattering mirror, a figure suddenly appeared on the parapet of the top floor, a monk in ancient yellow. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman, but he possessed a powerful magical power. "How did you find me?" the figure asked calmly. "It seems, to be honest, I have a special sense of magic." Leah looked up at the figure. Although he had already guessed his identity, he still asked politely, "Would you like to introduce yourself? You can call me Ancient One." The Ancient One smiled kindly and hopped down from the parapet. "I'm not spying on you. I just wanted to find a chance to talk with you. I didn't expect you guys to have so much energy." He was referring to Leah, who had stayed up late to party. Leah's suspicions were confirmed, and he suddenly felt that the Ancient One's presence was understandable. He was the guardian of this world, and his presence would inevitably disrupt the course of the future. So it was natural that he would be targeted by the Ancient One. "Then why did you seek me out?" Leah asked. "I can see the future, but your presence has disrupted the original course of this world. If possible, I hope you can minimize this disruption," Ancient One stated directly. Leah smiled faintly at this. "I admit that what you say sounds plausible, But why should I listen to you? In exchange, I can guide you in the use of your power. Ancient One's words left Leah stunned. Oh? So you think I'm not proficient in my power? Leah asked. Indeed, the Ancient One nodded, unconcerned with Leah's feelings. I admit that you possess great power, but your use of it is still too limited. I can release lightning, create energy barriers, and even transform into your appearance. Then can you open a mirror dimension? Can you open a portal? Can you enter the spiritual dimension? The Ancient One's barrage of questions left Leah speechless. The corner of his mouth twitched in embarrassment. His own power was inherited from the god of war. Although that guy was a magician, he chose the warrior route, including Diana. This directly caused Leah to use his power in a very simple and crude way. However, the power of magic is not limited to attack. By the way, Ancient One, Mage, don't you want me not to interfere with the progress of this world? Why do you still want to guide me? Leah was momentarily unable to understand the thoughts of the Supreme Sorcerer in front of him. Ancient One smiled and said, I have seen the future. At some point in the future, I will face death, and a new Supreme Sorcerer will inherit my mantle. But I saw a catastrophe that swept the entire universe, and I am worried that the new Supreme Sorcerer will not be able to shoulder his responsibilities. Leah knew this plot. The catastrophe that Ancient One was talking about was the Infinity War, instigated by the purple potato monster Thanos. Leah asked a question he'd wanted to ask in his previous life. Since you know you'll die, and you're worried the next Sorcerer Supreme won't be powerful enough, why don't you avoid your own death? I believe you didn't die of old age. Fate is unpredictable. Ancient One's gaze suddenly grew profound. Brings more shackles upon oneself. Leah felt dizzy after hearing these words. Talking to these old, immortal people was exhausting. He'd only asked a question, yet he'd been blundering into a mountain of nonsense. Simply put, unless one transcends the three realms and transcends the five elements, no one can escape fate. More simply, a supporting character should cultivate their own character. A supporting character is simply someone who makes way for the protagonist. Also, I hope you can intervene appropriately when the infinite catastrophe strikes. If it can improve the future, then there's nothing wrong with some interference. Even us peeking into the future is a form of interference. The Ancient One wasn't some rigid, old-fashioned person. Everything he did was to make the future a better place. After saying this, the Ancient One's gaze fell on Leah, as if awaiting her response. Well, you've gone through so much trouble, essentially hoping I either won't disrupt the future or help the world survive the catastrophe, right? Yes, I promise. When the catastrophe you mentioned strikes, I'll help. Given the Ancient One's reputation within the cinematic universe, Leah didn't think he was up to any schemes. Since he was willing to mentor her, learning from him wouldn't be a bad idea. Leah was eagerly anticipating the level of the Ancient One card she'd unlock. Logically, it should be at least orange quality, right? Receiving Leah's affirmative response, the Ancient One smiled with relief. When you're ready, come to Nepal, Kathmandu. With that, the Ancient One waved his hand, welding a portal in midair, then entered and vanished. Learn all sorts of esoteric magic. Leah smacked her lips, watching the vanishing portal. Over the next few days, the antidote to the extremis virus was developed. It only needed a final experiment before it could be used on Pepper. As for the space-time signal device, after nearly 2 weeks of detection and calculation, it had locked onto the first homologous signal. The journey home was no longer so far-fetched. All that was left was to await the final results. That day, Leah bid farewell to Tony and Banner and departed for Nepal. I don't understand what this guy is thinking. He has a good city life, but he insists on experiencing the life of an ascetic. Tony was puzzled by Leah's departure. Going on a pilgrimage to Nepal, Leah had said. Dr. Banner shrugged. I've had similar experiences before. By the way, Tony, is Veronica's system debugged yet? Not yet. Let's go debug it together. With that, Tony and Banner headed straight into the lab. I've had a tragic cold lately, and my head is feeling dizzy. I'll have another update tonight. Chapter 245, Baron Mordo. After leaving America, Leah borrowed Tony Stark's earpiece, with Jarvis providing navigation throughout the journey. Mr. Leah, Nepal is located in the interior of the southern Himalayas, separated from China. At your current speed, continuing southeast will take about 5 minutes. With Jarvis, the AI-powered navigation, Leah successfully arrived in Nepalese airspace. Nepal itself is a small country, covering less than 150,000 square kilometers and with a population of nearly 30 million. This small nation boasts rich religious culture, attracting countless tourists each year. Visitors from all over the country experience Nepal's religious culture, a journey known as a path of spiritual cleansing. Upon arriving in Nepal, Lee Ya's battlesuit was completely nanoscaled, revealing his tracksuit. Nepal is a small country with a large population, and the limited space was packed with a diverse crowd. Most were locals, but there were also many glamorously dressed foreign tourists. This diverse mix of races shaped the landscape of Nepal today. On both sides of the Nepal street, rows of shops were closely packed together, and merchants and tourists were communicating awkwardly, and no one could understand what the other wanted to say. Lee walked among the crowd, his body wrapped in a faint divine power, making it impossible for people nearby to squeeze on him. He walked all the way like this. There were many temples nearby, but according to Lee Ya's memories of his previous life, at least 800 of that kind of facade. Lee was not in a hurry to find what Kamartaj was. He was more like a tourist, walking around casually. Coming to an ancient temple, Lee looked up at the statue above the main hall, thoughtful. "Friend, aren't you going to burn incense and offer sacrifices?" A deep voice boomed from behind. Lee, without turning, whispered, "A mere minor deity, he can't bear my offerings." As the god of punishment, Lee would shrink even if the statue of a minor deity were here, let alone the statue itself. The figure behind him chuckled, walked over to Lee, and asked, "Are you a magician?" Lee turned to see the man, whose hair was white, tied in a bun, revealing a smooth forehead. His features were chiseled, and his eyes were deep-set. His calm gaze concealed an undisguised arrogance and ferocity. Wasn't this Caecilius? Originally a disciple of the Ancient One, he later betrayed the Ancient One, seeking eternity, by joining Dormammu in the Dark Dimension. According to the plot, Caecilius should have recently infiltrated the library of Kamartaj, killed the library's guardian, and stolen several pages from the Book of Cagliostro containing instructions for summoning the Dark Lord Dormammu. Unexpectedly, he'd see him there again. However, it's not inconceivable. If the Ancient One noticed Leah, then Caecilius would too. He's still learning the spells from the pages of the Book of Cagliostro. Not has Doctor Strange's photographic memory, but with his unparalleled magical talent, a few days of studying classical Sanskrit and the Vedas would allow him to effortlessly perform space-time magic after just a glance at a few pages of lengthy spells. Without drawing on the power of the Dark Dimension, Caecilius wouldn't dare confront the Ancient One head-on. With the appearance of Leah, a powerful sorcerer who wasn't a disciple of the Ancient One, Caecilius naturally sought to win him over. If he could win her over, his chances of defeating the Ancient One would undoubtedly increase. "Strictly speaking, I'm not a sorcerer," Leah said, scanning Caecilius. "You pondered this." Caecilius felt an inexplicable sense of danger. But he couldn't strike a smiling face. At least Caecilius hadn't provoked him yet. Leah wasn't the protector of this world, and playing the role of a silent mother god wasn't Leah's style. "Sir, if you desire to master advanced magic, I can show you a path to eternity, the great and beautiful one." Caecilius spoke volumes, describing the grandeur of the Dark Dimension. At that moment, several upon seeing Caecilius, they shouted, "They're here!" The Ancient One and Mordo. At the name of the Ancient One, Caecilius's face darkened. He hadn't yet been imbued with Dormammu's power, and facing the Ancient One head-on would only lead to abuse. The Ancient One is a hypocrite. Only the power of the Dark Dimension can bring you eternity. Leaving these words behind, Caecilius led his followers, who had poured into the main hall, and fled to the rear. As they fled, he used his ring to create a circle of portals. As they left, a black man wielding a short staff rushed in from behind. The black monk glanced around, his gaze settling on Li Yan, and sheathed his staff. "I presume you are Mr. Li Yan. Those men didn't do anything to you, did they?" "What could they do to me?" Li Yan asked with a smile. "Martial uniform. I was careless. I didn't realize Caecilius had set his sights on you. I haven't introduced myself yet. This is Mordo." The black mage in the green robe nodded, and Li Yan nodded slightly. The two of them exchanged greetings. "Mr. Leah, please follow me." "Did Caecilius say anything to you just now?" The Ancient One led Leah to Kamartaj, inquiring about the situation. "Something about the dark arts dimension, eternity, and so on." Baron Mordo arrived after just a few words. Leah said matter-of-factly, "They are corrupted fanatics, willingly surrendering their bodies and souls to darkness in exchange for eternal power. You must not listen to them. Speaking of Caecilius and his companions, Mordo seemed filled with righteous indignation. A man with a deep sense of justice, he deeply abhorred Caecilius and his gang, who betrayed their mentor and slaughtered their fellow disciples. Although Baron Mordo was originally planned to turn evil, unlike Caecilius's self-indulgent descent into darkness, Baron Mordo's convictions about justice were shattered. The fact that his trusted mentor wielded the power of the Dark Dimension dealt a powerful blow to Mordo's faith. Chapter 246, The Magic of Camartage. The group made their way through the crowd and arrived at a plain door. Leah looked up and recognized it as the entrance to Camartage she had seen in movies from her previous life. Master Ancient One, don't you think the temple across the street is more like Camartage than yours? Leah couldn't help but quip. Mordo smiled inscrutably. I thought so too when I first arrived. A simple wooden door seemed to separate Camartage from Kathmandu. While the outside was bustling and noisy, Camartage itself was serene and tranquil. Leah followed the Ancient One into the temple. Within the square hall, adorned with folding screens and imbued with a rich Chinese style, were 4 small wooden tables. A waiter replaced the incense burner with incense and served 2 cups of fragrant tea. Mr. Leah, please have some tea, and handing the other to Li Yam. Thank you. Leah took the teacup, gently lifted the lid, and subconsciously blew on the tea leaves before taking a sip. Finest pre-rain Longjing tea, so why add honey? That's not honey, it's a soul cleanser, supposed to cleanse the soul, Ancient One explained, taking a sip. Mr. Leah, can you demonstrate your power to me? Of course. Leah placed the teacup back on the wooden table and stood face to face with the Ancient One. He raised his hand, and divine power surged from it, transforming into lightning and flashing continuously. Not only Ancient One, but also Mordo and the waitress standing behind the screen, were wide-eyed. The power Leah displayed was unlike any magic of Camartage. Though they didn't know what kind of power it was, it didn't prevent them from sensing the immense power pulsing from Leah's fingertips. It's incredible. Your power should also be considered magic, but it is pure and more powerful than the magic I know. Ancient One looked carefully at the thunder in Leah's hand, and he felt the biggest difference between Leah and his power. The mages of Camartage, their magic comes from the power of different dimensions of the Dark Lord Dormammu and gained eternal life. In contrast, Ancient One cannot escape reincarnation, nor can he escape the way of heaven. Leah's power comes from the source of magic, and he has been recognized by the source of magic, so this power is not borrowed, but generated by himself. Ancient mages gain mana through spells, gain energy from other dimensions of the multiverse, and through spells, they conjure shields and weapons to create magic. His hands, and an orange light. Can you do this, Mr. Liang? Guyi snapped his fingers, and the energy shield in front of him flew forward, like a firework going out, and gradually disappeared. I'm sorry, once my energy leaves my hands, it will explode, whether it is thunder or the divine lightning spear, they will explode when thrown out. Leah is not able to turn divine power into weapons now. I think it's because your mental power's control over energy is not perfect enough. Your mental power is very powerful, but the utilization rate is less than 1%. To cast magic, you need a strong mental power to support it. Ancient One revealed the secret in one sentence. As the Supreme Mage, Ancient One has the ability to read minds, but he cannot see into Leah's heart. Because Leah has spiritual power that is almost the same as Ancient One. Possessing such a strong spiritual power, but not being able to cast magic, this really makes Ancient One feel incomprehensible. Then Master Ancient One, how can I train my spiritual power? Leah asked humbly. Ancient One paced back and forth in the center of the temple, suddenly turned around, slapped Leah on the chest. Let me take a look at the form of your soul first. There was a sound of clang. It was like the sound of a heavy hammer hitting a steel plate. Leah did not resist the power of Ancient One, and his body moved slightly backward. Buzz! There was a tinnitus in his ears. Leah felt that the scenes around him were retreating. He tried to open his eyes and found that his body shook slightly, and Ancient One took a few steps back. He put his hands behind his back and repaired the broken bones. Well, that's right, Ancient One has boundless magic power, but his body is just mortal. He suddenly slapped Leah's chest with a palm. Who gave you the courage? But it was just a minor injury and he recovered quickly. Ancient One had a calm smile on his face, looking at Leah, who had turned into a soul, floating in the air. Li Ya's soul form was extremely bright, like a human-shaped lamp, emitting a slow silver light to the surroundings. I didn't expect Mr. Li Ya's soul to be so powerful. Mordo didn't notice Ancient One's abnormality. He looked directly at Li Ya's soul form, and his heart was shocked again. Whether a person's soul is strong or not depends on how bright his soul form is. The strong ones shine brightly, while the weak ones are dim. Li Ya's soul strength is almost catching up with the old wizard who has practiced for countless years. You can better examine your inner self in the soul state, Li Ya. Only when you understand your chakras, meridians, the generation and disappearance of energy, and achieve the unity of body and mind, can you perfectly control your own power. Following the Ancient One's guidance, Li Ya drifted in spirit form for a while. Once he became familiar with the state, he began to experiment with his divine power. Seeing Li Ya quickly enter the state, the Ancient One revealed a look of relief. He glanced at Mordo and the waitress, and the three of them exited the temple together. Time passed, and when Li Ya opened his eyes again, he found that the sun had already set. He clearly remembered entering Kamartaj at noon. Li Ya stretched his muscles and found that his understanding and control of divine power had improved. In the courtyard, Mordo was gazing at the sky. Noticing Li Ya leaving the temple, he smiled and said, "You're finally out. I didn't expect you to achieve enlightenment on your first spiritual practice, Epiphany. Is it that mysterious? I was simply observing my chakras and energy generation. Of course, I have a few insights." Li Ya stood in the courtyard and took a deep breath. "This is enlightenment." Mordo's eyes seemed to be looking at a monster. "You know, ordinary people may not be able to sense chakra even if they meditate for several years. Only 1 in 100 can gain some insights within a year. What about you, Master Mordo?" Li Ya asked with a smile. "Me." Mordo straightened his body and said half jokingly and half seriously, "I am 1 in 1,000. Under the guidance of Master Ancient One, I can absorb magical energy in just half a year. According to this logic, Dr. Strange, Stephen Strange should be 1 in 10,000. After all, it only took this guy a few months to practice from a muggle to the level of Supreme Sorcerer." Chapter 247, Learning to Weld Any Door. After chatting with Mordo for a while, Mordo led Leah to an empty room. "This is your room. The Ancient One said you'll be staying here for a while." The room was small, but very neat. A wooden bed was carved into the wall, and a hint of moonlight streamed in through the window. Leah sat on the edge of the bed. He was so high up, and suddenly found himself in this place, feeling a strange feeling within him. He thought about it, but couldn't put his finger on it. "If you need anything, feel free to contact me, or you can go out and buy it yourself. Kathmandu may not be a prosperous city, but you can still buy basic necessities." Mordo smiled and walked out. As he closed the door, he suddenly remembered something and handed Leah a piece of paper. Wi-Fi password, smart. Seeing that Leah had guessed it, Mordo said nothing and left without saying anything. After connecting his phone to Wi-Fi, Leah discovered he had received an email. It was signed by Steve Rogers. Oh my god. Captain America can actually send emails. Opening the email from Captain America, it was just a few lines. It basically said he'd moved to a new place, his neighbors were friendly, and he was still working at S.H.I.E.L.D., and that everyone could come get together at his new place sometime. Leah could tell that after Captain America learned how to use a computer to send emails, he'd probably sent one to all his friends, including Tony and Dr. Banner. Moved to a new place? How would you feel if you knew your neighbors upstairs, downstairs, front, and back were all S.H.I.E.L.D. agents? He thought about it, but couldn't bring himself to say it. Leah quickly typed on his phone, sending Captain America a reply. He told him he was traveling in Nepal and would visit when he returned to America. He shut his phone off and sat cross-legged on his bed. Wanted to continue his astral practice, so he imitated the Ancient One, imbued with divine power, and slapped himself in the chest. Bang! 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 Leah knocked 4 or 5 times, but there was no response. Fortunately, he was in his room, and no one saw what was happening, otherwise it would have been embarrassing. Forget it, go to sleep. I'll ask him tomorrow how to experience an out-of-body experience. The next day, Leah woke up as the sun rose. Footsteps sounded outside, and then, dwang, 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 someone knocked on his door. Come in. Leah straightened his clothes. The door opened, and a maid brought him a basin of water. Master Leah, this is water for washing. Master Guya asked you to meet him in the courtyard after you've washed. Okay, thank you. Didn't wash his face or brush his teeth, his body wouldn't get dirty. But since someone had brought him water, he decided to wash. After a quick wash, Leah entered the courtyard. It was barely dawn, but several people were already standing in formation. Mordo, like a drill instructor, instructed the apprentices in channeling and releasing magical energy. They waved their arms in unison, condensing sparks of energy in midair. Master Ancient One, you're looking for me? Leah asked, approaching the Ancient One. Yes, the Ancient One winked at the male attendant behind him, who presented a tray of 2-finger rings in pale yellow. This is the suspended ring. We use it to open portals. Mordo will teach the apprentices how to open portals later, and you can also learn, my power is different from yours. Can I use the suspended ring? After all, Leah's power wasn't drawn from magic from another dimension, so she doubted she could use the Ancient Ones and their spells. Don't worry, the Ancient One explained, walking into the courtyard. Your energy is purer than ours. Your energy is far more than just concentrated lightning. Your energy can do so much more. Mordo then told to end their morning exercises and begin practicing the suspended ring. He exchanged a glance with the Ancient One, then spoke loudly to the everyone group. Mastering the suspended ring is essential to learning magic. Clearer the image, the faster and easier it will be to summon the portal. As Mordo explained the key points, the apprentices followed suit. However, the portals they created were of varying sizes and extremely unstable, as if they could go out at any moment. Seeing the apprentices struggling, the Ancient One suddenly turned to Leah. Leah, would you like to try? Hearing the Ancient One's suggestion, Mordo became interested. Normally, they wouldn't assign any learning tasks to someone who had just arrived at Kamartaj the next day, but Leah was different. Compared to ordinary people, Leah possessed a powerful energy. Okay, I'll try. Don't laugh at me if I can't solder it, Leah smiled, placing the ring on her finger, twirled her fingers. Zizz, zizz, zizz. A series of silver-white sparks suddenly appeared in the air. These sparks followed Leah's fingers' movement, but instead of forming a circle, they quickly extinguished the moment they appeared. Isn't this too much for a novice? Mordo raised an eyebrow and smiled. Ancient One rolled his eyes at him. Don't jump to conclusions so soon. Keep watching. The silver sparks in the air died down, and Leah took a deep breath, thinking to himself that crossing the infinite universe and opening a portal to the Justice League headquarters was indeed too much of a stretch. Even magic couldn't bypass the barriers of parallel universes. Maybe the portal can connect different universes, but Leah has not reached that level yet, so naturally he can't open it. For now, let's open the portal in this universe. Thinking of this, Leah raised his hand again, thinking in his mind which portal should he open. The one on Earth is too unchallenging. How about trying to open a door to Asgard? Leah has never been to Asgard, and he doesn't know if the memory of Asgard in his previous life will work. Or, how about opening a door near Leidachu? Well, Leidachu. So, Leah thought wildly in his mind that Leidachu owed him an axe, and if he didn't give him the storm hammer, he would hammer him into the ground with one blow and 80 hits. Mashin in November is over, dears, please give me as many monthly tickets as you have. Chapter 248, Where's My Hammer? As Leah wildly imagined the scene of swinging the hammer, the thunder hammer, in his mind, silver sparks began to swirl in the air, and gradually a circular hole opened up. My God, he really did it, and it only took 2 tries. Mordo shook his head and sighed, in his heart sighing. He couldn't help but sigh that magic is really about talent. Those without talent can't compare to those who are talented, even if they work hard for a lifetime. Some people are born for magic, and Leah is such a person. He just needs to practice hard, and it won't be long before he surpasses me in magical attainments, Guyi said with pride, as if a horse breeder had discovered a 1,000-mile horse. He was proud of his own vision. Then someone added, of course, the most important thing is that Leah is humble and polite. He's a man with a strong sense of justice, unlike Caecilius. Don't worry, our people will find Caecilius and recover the 2 stolen pages. Mordo learned of Caecilius's betrayal, and the Ancient One was the most heartbroken. After all, before Mordo arrived at Kamartaj, Caecilius had been his most favored disciple. The two exchanged a few words, and the portal Leah had welded in mid-air gradually expanded, allowing everyone to clearly see what was happening on the other side. It was a battlefield. Everyone's attention was drawn to the scene outside the portal. But what surprised everyone was the race of the participants. One group, clad in gleaming ancient armor and wielding a variety of radiant weapons, seemed like divine forces descending from the sky, slaughtering on the battlefield. Their opponents, however, looked like Stone Age natives. Though the natives everyone outnumbered the armored soldiers several times over, their clothing was tattered and they wielded only ordinary weapons. The difference between them and the armored soldiers was immediately apparent. Is Thor fighting? According to the plot after Avengers Endgame, after Thor and Loki return to Asgard, Odin assigns him to quell the unrest in the Nine Realms. Amidst the chaos, Leia saw the devastating Thor. But then, a hammer suddenly flew from the other side of the portal. The hammer toppled a group of natives, and finally, one man, clutching the hammer's handle tightly, flew towards Liam. Roar! Roar! The man fell to the ground, roaring as he rose, glaring fiercely around, and then, stunned. Where the hell was this? The hammer continued to fly forward with unstoppable force. Liu dropped his grip and instinctively dodged. Mjolnir flew past Lian, slamming into Mordo and the Ancient One hammer like the native. Whoosh! Mordo was carried skyward by the hammer. Why is this hammer so heavy? The Ancient One walked over and examined the fallen hammer. This is Thor's hammer. Legend has it that it's made from the core of a dead planet. No one can lift it unless Thor approves. I see. Mordo's face lit up with relief. So the hammer was so precious, so it was only natural that he couldn't lift it. Lee, how did you open a portal to another world? Mordo was a little confused. Oh, Thor's hammer, ahem. Thor lost his axe to me, and I was thinking about confiscating his hammer. Lee spoke seriously, but everyone, including the Ancient One, was stunned. What the hell? When Thor and Lee made the bet, the Ancient One hadn't noticed Lee and was unaware of the situation. Now, hearing Lee's words, he felt like he was living in a dream. That was Thor, Odin's son. As the Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One was indeed powerful, even not much weaker than Odin. But he was born immortal, and if it weren't for the power of the Dark Dimension, he wouldn't even be alive today. Then, before stunned gaze, Leia took up Mjolnir. Mordo's mouth twitched wildly, his neck twisting mechanically as he looked at the Ancient One with a hurt expression. Didn't you say that no one could lift Mjolnir? The Ancient One's face darkened. Leia has received Mjolnir's approval. He then looked up at the sky. What a beautiful day. White clouds drifted across the cloudless sky. Elsewhere, in Vanaheim, one of the 9 kingdoms, Thor led his soldiers to quell a rebellion. He swung Mjolnir as usual, his blows unmatched. But just as he swung his hammer again, crushing a large number of rebels natives, the local rebel leader appeared on the battlefield. Roar! It was a stone giant, nearly 6 meters tall, clad in leather armor. He held a 1,000-year-old tree in one hand, and with a single swing, he could overturn a field of Asgardian warriors. Thor, that's him. He's the rebel leader, Scripps. He's defeated our army twice. The female warrior Sif wielded her sword with both hands, leading several enemies before approaching Thor. Thor's gaze fell on the stone giant and he said calmly, "Tell the warriors to retreat. I'll take care of that giant." Then, Thor stretched out his hand, summoning his hammer. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. For 3 full seconds, Thor kept on moving his hand, summoning his hammer, but his own soldiers were attacked again. The earth trembled. Asshole! Thor, heartbroken, knelt on one knee and handsomely stretched out his hand. He summoned Thor's hammer again. However, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After waiting for nearly half a minute, Thor's expression could no longer hold back. He looked around, his eyes filled with confusion. Hey, where's my hammer? Where's my hammer? Has anyone seen my hammer? Where the hell is my hammer? Chapter 249, Learning Achievements. Thor's hammer didn't rest in Leia's hand for long. Suddenly, as if summoned by some kind of force, it soared skyward with a whoosh. Looks like Thor is calling his hammer. Leia looked up at the soaring Thor's hammer. He had just seen Thor fighting on the battlefield. Given Thor's current strength, without Thor's hammer, his combat effectiveness would be greatly reduced. So, the question arose. Thor's hammer was estimated to be traveling at 400 kilometers per hour. At that speed, could it reach the battlefield from Earth before Thor was slain? Thor considered him a brother after all, and Leia couldn't bear to betray him. So, he donned the ring again and extended his free hand, drawing circles in the sky face. It was a horrific sight. Thor's hammer passed through the circle of silver-white flames. Leia lowered his hands, and the portal in the sky disappeared. "It seems you have completely mastered the use of the suspended ring," Ancient One said, standing in front of Li Yan. Li Yan had indeed only mastered the use of the suspended ring. Open the portal. Master Ancient One could draw the teleportation array and open the portal without the aid of the suspended ring. Of course, doing so would be more difficult. With the assistance of the suspended ring, it will naturally be easier to operate. Li Yan had some self-awareness. Just like Thor's hammer, it only served to guide power. Over-reliance on the auxiliary functions of the instrument would actually limit the improvement of one's own strength. Li agreed. Next, you can go to the library and look for some books on magical theory. They should give you some inspiration. If you have any questions, you can ask me. If I'm not here, you can ask Mordo as well. Mordo urged the apprentices who were watching to return to their training. Li had other things to attend to and couldn't always guide Li Yan. Li had no interest in watching the apprentices do their calisthenics. She asked the waiter where the library was and walked over. The library at Kamar Taj was much larger than Li Yan had imagined. Although there was no second floor, once inside, she felt overwhelmed by the rows of bookshelves. Looking around, she was filled with a vast expanse of antique books. The last time Li Yan read a paper book was 2.5 years ago, when she was still in school. Now, entering the library to find a magic book, she suddenly felt a little excited. "Are you the new Mr. Li Yan?" A man, 8 feet tall and with an 8-foot waist, stepped out from behind the bookshelves. Of course, it wasn't that exaggerated, but this sudden appearance was indeed quite portly. His shaved head was just beginning to sprout new growth, and the flesh on his face squeezed his features together. "Just call me Li Yan. You must be Xiao Wang, the guardian of the library, right?" Only after these words did Li Yan realize something was amiss. After all, everyone here, seeing Li Yan as Chinese, spoke to him in Chinese. Librarian Xiao Wang, on the other hand, hadn't thought of that aspect, or perhaps he'd heard it but hadn't bothered to expose it. He stared at Li Yan expresslessly, asking, "What kind of books would you like to borrow?" "Master Ancient One has instructed that the books in the mage area be open to you. Start with the basics. I recommend Maxim's Enlightenment and the Book of Regelias." Administrator Xiao Wang spoke as he took the corresponding books from the shelf. "Li Yan, how is your Sanskrit?" "Many magic books are written in classical Sanskrit and Vedic. I know every language of known language civilization," Li Yan said nonchalantly, like some middle school goddess who could speak 1,000 languages. It was a small perk of gaining the approval of the source of magic. Xiao Wang's chubby face twitched at this pretentious statement. He didn't bother to verify it. After all, he was a librarian, solely responsible for sorting books after borrowing and returning them. "Since you know classical Sanskrit and Vedic languages, I'd like to recommend a few slightly more esoteric books. By the way, bring me 2 books on soul projection." The Ancient One said. "I can borrow more than others, I know. The Ancient One told me so." Xiao Wang expresslessly took a dozen books from the shelf, devoted himself to studying these magic books. Although he could finish a thick magic book in a few seconds, understanding the intricate knowledge within and integrating it was no easy task. It was like Superman being forced by his father to learn about the 28 galaxies. But asking him to integrate all that knowledge and become a scientist would be more painful than killing him. Li was relatively lucky. At least he didn't need to meditate for ages like mortals to discover those elusive chakras and meridians. A month later, the Ancient One, long absent, returned to Kamar Taj. "Master Mordo, send Li Yan to see me." Returning, the Ancient One took a sip of the tea offered by the waiter. His next order was to see Li Yan. Master Mordo immediately left the temple, and a moment later, Li Yan followed him back. "Master Ancient One, you're looking for me. Well, how's your training been lately?" He was more reserved than a month ago. If, before, he had been able to detect the energy fluctuations emanating from Li Yan the moment he saw him, now, if he hadn't been paying close attention, he would have mistaken Li Yan for an ordinary person. "Yes, your control over your energy has improved greatly, but you're still far from the realm of following the way of nature." The Ancient One offered generous praise, but he also didn't want Li Yan to become complacent. Of course, the Ancient One was completely overthinking things. Li had always been proud, so opening a portal to steal a book from the library was child's play. Ever since Tony was summoned to Kamar Taj by Leah through a portal, the two brothers had been playing a game of making things suddenly disappear. like Reinhardt's hammer, Roland's shield, Black Widow's panties, which she left outside in the shower. And then there was Coulson, who was on the helicarrier listening to Director Fury's instructions one moment, and then vanished the next. Ahem, Master Ancient One, do you wish to inspect my progress? Leah stared at the Ancient One without changing his expression. He nodded, hands behind his back. Yes, if possible, I'd like to know your progress. Okay, as you wish. Leah smiled and stepped back a few steps. Then, with a single wave of his hand, divine power emanated, forming silver-white lines in the air. Chapter 250, Mirror Dimension. In midair, silvery white lines suddenly swirled, forming a square. Then, under Leah's divine power, the square transformed into an 8-pointed star, with numerous intricate runes appearing around it. Mordo, watching from the side, sighed and nodded. This isn't the first time I've seen Leah cast a protective shield, but it always astounds me. Others, welding a shield or creating a portal, would require a long, frantic effort of both hands. Leah, on the other hand, simply flicked his hand, and the shield appeared. There's a difference between people. Not bad. Can you conjure other magical weapons? Ancient One smiled with satisfaction. After all, before, Leah's energy would explode as soon as it left his body. In just over a month, he had not only mastered controlling his power, but had done so with perfection. Of course, Leah caused the protective shield to gradually vanish. Then, he clasped his hands together, stepped back with his right foot, and assumed his attack stance. Simultaneously, his divine power transformed into lightning, intertwining his hands to form a circular fan blade. These thunder fan blades were condensed from divine power whip. I won't show you. This one lash can split your temple in two. Leah's words were extremely arrogant, but they were also true. Although the temple of Kamartaj was protected by a magical array, making it difficult for ordinary people to penetrate even with modern firearms, such a protective array was still very fragile against Leah. The Ancient One smiled thoughtfully. Then you'll need a relatively solid place to practice. He raised his hand and pointed at the air. Clang. The air in midair began to crack like shattered glass. Then, with a wave of his hands, the shattered mirror began to shift, radiating a dazzling light like a kaleidoscope. The Ancient One entered first, followed closely by Liam. Passing through the invisible wall in midair, looking behind them, the other side of the mirror seemed ethereal. The suspension ring. Master Ancient One, I can already decipher the magic circle within the suspension ring, Leah interrupted. The Ancient One, half a second later, the Ancient One chuckled self-deprecatingly. With a wave of his hand, the mirror dimension began to expand, extending the original scene within the room. It felt like a brick on the ground, magnified countless times. Leah sensed the energy fluctuations. Use energy to break through the physical layer of space and enter a chasm between illusion and reality. Be careful of time branches created by those manipulating time. Generally speaking, unless one is a cosmic powerhouse or the manipulator themselves, others won't be able to sense the change in the original timeline. Listening to Leah's muttering, Ancient One rubbed his brow. It seems you know more than I thought. Of course, I came from another world, Leah casually explained. Suddenly, he noticed Ancient One, hands behind his back, staring at him. From Ancient One's gaze, Leah detected a fighting spirit. Master Ancient One, do you wish to spar with me? Leah asked uncertainly. Yes, I do, Ancient One smiled. I've protected Earth for millennia. In all these long years, I haven't fought anyone in a long time. From Ancient One's tone, he had the air of a lone warrior seeking to defeat the enemy, the Ancient One. His slaying was pure fate. He had lived too long yearning to transcend the cycle of reincarnation. But he hadn't found a suitable successor. This was precisely why the Ancient One opened his gates, welcoming to Kamartaj. If their character improved, he would take them in and teach them everyone magic. His goal was to find someone to succeed him soon. Imprisoned by fate for millennia, the Ancient One longed for a battle not about protecting Earth, but simply about unleashing his utmost strength. Ancient One, no offense, I can kill you in an instant, Leah spoke frankly. The Ancient One was powerful, that was undeniable, but no matter how strong he was still mortal. Leah didn't even need to summon divine power to pierce his opponent's heart with a single blow. I know, the Ancient One didn't deny Leah's words. Body of steel, it was completely useless against a mage of the Ancient One's caliber. His magic resistance wasn't high enough to evade his opponent's spells. Seeing Li Yi's hesitation, the Ancient One quickly spoke, "Then let's not kill each other. Can we just have a simple sparring match?" After a moment's silence, Li Yi nodded, "Okay, as long as either the Ancient One or Odin were alive, Thanos wouldn't dare wreak havoc on Earth." So, Li Yi wanted to see just how powerful the Ancient One could be when he got serious. He must be at the level of an orange epic. Li Yi thought to himself. With Li Yi's agreement, the Ancient One placed his hands behind his back, took a half step to the side with his right foot, and arched his back slightly. As he extended his right hand, a reddish gold halo appeared within it. It was his concentrated magical weapon. "Come on, attack with all your might," the Ancient One said to Li Yi with a smile. "As you wish." Before he could finish his words, Li Yi, unleashing super speed, vanished from the spot, reappearing behind the Ancient One. The Ancient One didn't even have a chance to turn back as Li Yi launched a punch into his right shoulder. A solid strike would have shattered even the Ancient One's shoulder, leaving him severely injured if not fatal. But just as Li Yi's fist was within 10 centimeters of the Ancient One, an energy shield materialized. With a thud like a hammer striking a bell, Li Yi slammed his full force into the shield behind the Ancient One. The shield shimmered, but didn't budge. Li Yi, bearing the recoil, fell back. At that moment, the Ancient One swung his right hand back, its golden blade slicing at Li Yi's throat. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.